Today's episode comes to you from the Blue Chew studio. Right now, when you buy 2 months of Blue Chew Gold, you get the third for free with promo code WRESTLE at BlueChew.com.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle With.
Something to Wrestle With.
Bruce Pritchard.
Well, you know.
That's not a rib.
No, yeah, but me.
There's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle With.
Something to Wrestle
Something to wrestle with.
Something to wrestle with. Bruce Pritchard. Conrad, the mortgage guy, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle With. John Layfield? John, what's going on, man? How are you?
I tell you what's going on, Conrad. Bradshaw 316 is what's going on, because that says I just stole your fucking podcast.
All right, you ain't got to get hot about it.
I ain't hot about it, but Bradshaw 316 had just said I stole your fucking podcast.
Well, we're glad you did. I think people had a lot of fun last week. We debuted some new ideas and some new concepts. It was an impromptu last-minute show, and we sort of called it in the ring on 316 day, and it was a rare Monday Something to Wrestle, but now we're back on Friday. But last Monday, man, we had a lot of fun. We visited with our pal Tony from Heritage Auctions. We talked about what the value might be of a Stone Cold Steve Austin knee brace in order to celebrate 316 day. We also valued my WCW United States title, and I agreed that I'm actually going to be sending that to auction. It's going to be at WrestleCon, and you can check it out in Vegas. But of course, this May, it'll be on the auction block for Heritage Auctions. We're going to have Tony join us a little later in the show. But what really had everybody buzzing last week, John, was curtain jerkers. What was the feedback that you saw from our silly idea that we finally revealed to the world last week?
The feedback was pretty incredible, especially when you find out we were talking about mule flogging, which I had no idea we were going to talk about, but that's where the conversation went.
If you're not in the loop, I encourage you to check it out in the archives.
Conrad, I want to tell you, that was the craziest thing I think I've nearly ever been a part of on an interview. I had no idea that was going to happen. None. What I was teeing up was the rooster underneath the ring in Mexico City, because we got the footage of it and nobody else has the footage. So I thought, man, this is awesome. We got this footage. And then all of a sudden Hornswoggle brings up the Zack Ryder tandem bed. I had no idea that was going to happen.
I don't think any of us did. I don't think we were ready. It was news to all of us. To say the wrestling world was shocked would be an understatement. Over 2 million impressions just on social alone. The internet was buzzing about Zack Ryder. And as a reminder, Matt Cardona is not finished, which may or may not
finished.
be the problem.
And we may or may not have the Good Brothers to help us clarify a situation too.
Okay. We'll stay tuned for that. I do want to talk about some news and notes. We normally like to have fun here on the program, but we got a little bit of sad news in our wrestling community. I think most wrestling fans would probably consider that if they're not the best tag team of all time, the Midnight Express are certainly on everyone's Mount Rushmore of great tag teams. And sadly, we lost Bobby Eaton, Huntsville native, a few years ago. And this past week, the wrestling world lost another North Alabama native, Dennis Condrey. Dennis Condrey, one of the more underrated performers in the history of tag team wrestling. He really helped establish the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express. And I think it elevated tag team wrestling in Mid-South and in Jim Crockett Promotions. And when you just think about tag team excellence, I mean, the Midnight Express comes up over and over and over as an inspiration to a lot of the great tag teams today, like FTR. John, you're a student of the game. What can you tell us about Dennis Condrey, the in-ring performer?
You know, it's Condrey was just a consummate tag team professional. You know, the medics, the old tag team, and the guys in the white suit, man, those guys got massive amounts of heat. Dr. Jerry Graham was one of their managers at the time. That is a lot where Condrey learned how to get heat. And, you know, it's just different. You know, when wrestling was, you know, say 60, 70 years ago, wrestling was completely different. Up in the Northeast, it was the great big guys, you know, the Bruno Sammartinos, the great big, you know, tough guys. And in the South, it was more of heat and characters. Guys like the Green Shadow, guys like the Medics. You had so many guys. Roy Welch was a big reason behind all that. But Condre was the beneficiary of that. I mean, he learned how to get heat from one of the greatest tag teams of all time that could get massive freaking amounts of heat. And he was just a consummate professional at it. He knew how to put guys over. He knew how to get the team over. He knew how to get the territory over. I mean, Condre was just the consummate professional wrestler.
You hear a lot of guys pay really nice tribute to a guy like Dennis Condrey. And the thing you hear over and over again is how they just don't make wrestlers like this anymore. And there's some great tributes out there, like from Paul Heyman. He said, there are many who were close to Dennis, but few who had the blessings of learning more from him. What a remarkable performer. Much like Ray Stevens, he did it so naturally. Instinct, talent, feel. I remain forever appreciative of the patience he had in dealing with me. Thank you, Dennis. And even Ricky Morton, who's perhaps one half of his most famous and iconic opponents, one half of the Rock and Roll Express. Whereas the Midnight Express were the ultimate bad guys, I think most would agree who saw him do his thing in the ring. Ricky Morton was the ultimate babyface. And Ricky had this to say: it's hard to even find the words right now because losing my dear friend Dennis Condrey feels like losing a piece of my own life. Dennis wasn't just someone I shared a ring with. He was part of an era, a brother in this wild journey, and a man who helped shape what professional wrestling meant to so many people. We traveled the roads, lived the highs and lows, and created memories that I'll carry with me for the rest of my days. People saw the competitor, the toughness, the presence, but I got to know the man behind it all, a man with heart, with grit, with a love for the business that never faded. Those are the things I'll miss the most, the conversations, the laughs, and just knowing he was still out there. The wrestling world lost someone truly special, and I lost a friend I'll never forget. Rest easy, Dennis. Thank you for the memories, the miles, and the moments. You'll always have a place in my heart. What a fantastic tribute from Ricky Morton. If you go back and you review the tape, man, the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, did it get much better in tag team wrestling, John?
No, it sure didn't. And I was just reading an article by Tony Richards, who does a daily wrestling historical article. It's really, really good. I don't know how he finds the time to write as much as he does, but he's writing about Warren Bockwinkel, Nick Bockwinkel's dad, and how it trained Nick, how he trained Fez a lot. And it's so important about who brings you into the business. And so you look about the history of Condrey when he came in that Southern territory, and spread on Pensacola, around the Fullers. Then Condrey starts passing all that on. This business is not just about athleticism. Athleticism certainly helps, but it's not like playing an outside end in the NFL. Knowing the history of the game may or may not help you in NFL. It certainly won't hurt you. I think people should learn it, but knowing the history of wrestling is so important because you learn the background, you learn how to get heat, you learn how to do things that aren't just moves. And that's what Condrey was so good about. That's what Condrey passed on to others. That's what Condrey got from the others before him. It's just an incredible thing when you look. This is a great part of our history. I'm talking about Dennis Condrey was a terrific part of our history, and it left a huge mark of people that he touched, people that he helped, about territories that he built. I mean, he was an incredible person.
Do you think the Midnight Express should be in the WWE Hall of Fame? And if so, why don't you think it's happened already?
I think so. I don't know. I don't. I think Vince for a long time was reticent to acknowledge other territories, and I think that came from past prejudices. And I say prejudices, I don't mean he disliked them. It's just it was survival. You would not acknowledge the NWA. You would not acknowledge Crockett. You would not acknowledge Fritz or Vern or Eddie Graham because they're your competition. And I think that was so embedded in Vince that the Hall of Fame kind of carried that over. I think now that, it's kind of a little bit further removed from the territory days and that bias of, those guys are our competition, that I think stuff like that can happen. I certainly think that those guys are worthy to be in there. And I'd love to see them in. I just want to see Cornette induct somebody again.
Well, you mean Cornette get inducted? I mean, he's got to.
Cornette get inducted. Yes.
I mean, I feel like, the most tragic part of all this, obviously, besides the human loss, but I'm saying with regards to the Hall of Fame, I wish that Dennis and Bobby could have went into the Hall of Fame while they were still with us.
Yeah.
Stan Lane is still with us. Jim Cornette is still with us. And I'm like you, I'm ready to see him back on the WWE Hall of Fame stage. He was there to induct the Rock and Roll Express, and he needs to receive his flowers. And I'm really hopeful that happens, while Stan is still with us and Jimmy's still with us. Well, I want to also mention we've got a link in the description for today's show that will take you right to the GoFundMe for Dennis Condrey. Dax Harwood over with FTR on the other channel had this to say: Dennis Condrey is one half of the greatest tag team of all time, the Midnight Express. For years, they brought excitement and entertainment to millions of people. However, as great as he was in the ring, it doesn't hold a candle to the human being he was. A sweet, God-fearing man who loved his wife, Teresa. With her permission, I've opened this GoFundMe to help with funeral expenses and bills that she now has to take on her own. He didn't ask for this. I asked in his honor, could I do this for him? She allowed me to do this for Dennis and her, but is expecting absolutely nothing but love in return. If Dennis Condrey and the Midnight Express ever brought any amount of joy to your life and you're able to help, please do. If not, it's absolutely okay. Please send all your thoughts and prayers to Teresa Condrey in her time of need. Godspeed, lover boy, Dennis Condrey. Obviously one of the all-time greats. In an alternate universe, how successful could he and the Midnight Express have been in Vince McMahon's WWE when they first start to go wide, with rock and wrestling, and then their first WrestleMania in 85? Around that same 84, 85 period is when they were absolutely taking over in Mid-South. They got super hot and became one of the main attractions. And then even when they went to Jim Crockett Promotions, they started on top, and often it would be, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes in one main event, and then the Rock and Rolls and the Midnights on the other main event, if they were running sort of two towns, A and B shows, if you will. And oftentimes the tag team match would outdraw Flair and Dusty. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, was there a way in an alternate universe that the Midnight Express could have been a huge hit in the WWF? Because I can see that.
Yeah, if they had just been there.
Yeah,
that's all. If they had just been there. I mean, the Rock and Roll Boys, the Midnight Express, those guys would have got over like $1 million anywhere in the world. They would have been anywhere. The Simpson brothers out of Dallas, Tommy Wildfire Rich. I mean, you have a list of guys that could have got over anywhere and would have been huge in WWE. I was talking to Ricky Morton one day, who I love dearly, and his son Kerry as well. And he said, the difference between me and you? And I said, what? He goes, you had a contract. And I thought, you're exactly right. I got lucky. I mean, I got really lucky. I got to be in WWE in a time when business was incredibly hot. I mean, I could have been there from 91 to 96, and that would have been it. But back then, because you didn't stay in territories very long, I just happened to get there when the world changed and people got contracts, longer contracts. Never dreamed I'd be there this long, but never dreamed that business would take off like it did with Stone Cold again and The Rock and be incredible. And I was talking to Hacksaw this week. I was sitting by him at an autograph signing. Hacksaw got to be in 2 huge runs. A lot of those were his because he was there, but he was on loaded rosters in the Hulk Hogan era, the WrestleMania era, in the Attitude Era with WCW. Ricky and Robert and the Midnight Express, those guys were huge. You couldn't have been any better. Those guys are as good as any wrestlers that have ever wrestled on this planet. They just happen to be in territories that didn't make it as big as, say, WWE and then WCW did, but specifically WWE, or else they would have made a freaking fortune. And they'd have had merchandise all this time. It was just the difference of where you were. Some guys were really lucky to be in hot territories that made it huge and global, and some guys were unfortunate to be in hot territories that stayed regional and never made it big. And that was what was Midnight Express. And nothing against them. They were as good as any tag team in the history of the world. It's just where they were didn't put them in the place that they could make the super money that a lot of the guys did because they were there.
Shout out to the Condrey family. I know he's got a lovely wife, Teresa. They live like a couple miles up the street from my parents in Huntsville, Alabama. And I just can't believe he's gone. He was just at AEW last year. Normally, anytime they announced AEW in Huntsville, I'd get a text, hey, you think you can help me arrange some tickets? And I'd say, well, of course, Mr. Condrey. And it's funny because, John, I think sometimes people wonder, has the business passed them by? And I was like, Mr. Condrey, you can get tickets anywhere to any show. You just let me know when you want to go. And he's like, well, I'm not sure if anybody would even remember me. And I'm like, are you kidding? You can just show up to the back door of any wrestling show and say, I'm Dennis Condrey, and they're going to roll out the red carpet for you. Are you kidding? So
yeah, that's exactly right. And these guys, Conrad, I'm telling you, I've been in the ring with so many of these guys. They were in the ring with Midnight Express, but I was in the ring with all those other guys I mentioned, and except for Tommy. I would love to have been in the ring with Tommy Wildfire, but Conrad, it's just different when you get in the ring with those guys. It's just like you feel safe, not just safe as far as you're not going to hurt. You're going to have a hell of a match. No matter what the people are out there buying, what they're trying to do, they're trying to hijack the show. They're trying to be involved in the show. They want a different, it's going to be good. I mean, there's just nothing like guys like Dennis Condrey, the Rock and Roll Boys, and all those guys that are there's a lot of those guys, man, and those guys can just flat work. It's just, I don't know if it's a lost art. There were a lot of people back then that could do it. Those guys were some of the few.
Hey, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you already know how much I love Soul's Out of Office THC gummies. They've got some great sparkling beverages too, but man, those Out of Office gummies, hard to beat. But now they've launched something new, mood gummies. Now, lately, I've been more mindful about how I want to feel when I'm socializing, winding down, or just living my life. Instead of defaulting to a drink and hoping for the best, I've been choosing Soul's new mood gummies. Whenever I need a little spark to go out or something, maybe a little something to help settle down at night, they've got perfect options that make me feel right. The balance is the key to life. That's what they say. And by the way, I think Soul has nailed that with these new mood gummies. If you need a pick me up or a wind me down or anything in between, this is for you. If you're anything like me, your day and your night routines are not always, so routine. Whether it's doom scrolling that's keeping you up, or maybe you've got some hangovers keeping you down, bad habits can throw off your rhythm. And something that I found that can help me balance out are these Soul Mood Gummies. Soul is a wellness brand that makes delicious hemp-derived CBD and THC products designed to make feeling good simple. Soul's new mood gummies have precise dosing, clean ingredients, and formulations designed for predictable effects, so you can choose how you want to feel while staying in control. If you're looking for like a bright, social, energizing buzz, then go with the Uplift gummies. That's 3 milligrams of sativa, that's THC, plus you get the CBG. Now that's perfect for your daytime plans or beating that afternoon slump. Now, when it's time to wind down, I'm going to recommend the Mellow gummies. That's right. Mellow is going to give you 3 milligrams of indica THC plus CBN, and that is ideal for those cozy nights when you finally want to unplug. I'm telling you, my wife and I are sleeping better than ever, and a lot of it is because of the Mellow. I also want to brag about that just right anytime vibe. Soul calls it balance. These gummies blend 3 milligrams of hybrid THC plus some CBD for an easy, versatile feel, perfect for when you're listening to your favorite podcast. That's actually my daytime one right there. I like balance. There's 3 moods with 3 intentionally crafted formulas, but the same great taste. Whatever the moment, there is a Soul Mood Gummy to match. Make today a good day and get yourself some Soul gummies. Right now, Soul is offering our audience 30% off your entire order. Go right now to getsoul.com and use the code WRESTLE. That's GETSOUL.com, and the promo code is WRESTLE. You'll get 30% off. So listen, I hate to be a downer again, but I just saw over the past week since we hung out, John, Chuck Norris passed away. And I know Chuck Norris didn't have a ton of crossover in the wrestling space, but boy, you want to talk about when the wrestling business went national and it went wide, and Vince was really focusing on his expansions, and some of the territories were maybe at their peak. Chuck Norris was a rock star, going back to Bruce Lee movies and then all of the action hero stuff that happened through the 80s. I'm sure he inspired a lot of characters and a lot of moments in wrestling. Perhaps the most iconic moment that most of us remember of Chuck in wrestling is giving some sort of fancy kick to Jeff Jarrett at Survivor Series 1994. I saw this clip absolutely everywhere after Chuck Norris passed. Of course, I'm talking about the internet wrestling community, Twitter, that we all spend so much time on. But I was kind of surprised to hear, John, that Chuck Norris is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Again, I know he didn't have a ton of moments, but I'm thinking to myself, Drew Carey and others are in it. How the heck is Chuck Norris not in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think that's a mistake. I didn't realize he wasn't. I just assumed he was. Hey, you got to think about it. Chuck Norris was a badass, man. I mean, he was a legit fighter. He wasn't just a Hollywood stuntman. I mean, he fought, 100 fights or whatever it was. I saw his record the other day. I mean, it's massive. I mean, that guy was a badass, legit badass. And you got to think, if you're Jeff Jarrett and you got to get out there in cowboy boots and he's going to karate kick you in front of a live crowd, he's amped up. You're like thinking, this could end really badly. That's kind of nerve wracking. I've stood there for a couple guys and you're thinking, you know what, this might just knock all my teeth out. Jeff sat there and just kind of took it like a man. It looked like Chuck took great care of him, but that's a pretty nerve wracking thing when you're having to sit there and wait on it. But I didn't know he wasn't in the Hall of Fame. I just assumed he was. I think he should be.
I mean, if Arnold Schwarzenegger can be in the Hall of Fame, and he didn't do a ton in wrestling, but he was an action hero and inspired a lot. And obviously, I think he's inspired generations of people to start weightlifting and bodybuilding and taking better care of themselves, things like that. It just feels like, man, Chuck Norris, he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. But someone who is finally in the WWE Hall of Fame, maybe the news that made me most excited this week, Sid Vicious, Psycho Sid Justice, no matter what you call him, Sid Udy is now going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. His son Gunther actually took to social media and wrote, "It's official. My father, Psycho Sid Vicious, is going into the WWE Hall of Fame. The master and the ruler of the world is finally getting his flowers. Proud to be his son and to carry that legacy forward. The Hall of Fame just got a whole lot more vicious." This guy main evented not one, but 2 WrestleManias. Some of your favorite wrestlers didn't get a chance to main event one. And that rarefied air, Sid did it on 2 occasions, once with Hulk Hogan, once with The Undertaker for the title. Incredible moments here in the WWF, but on the other channel, man, whether it was the NWA or WCW, he was running around with the big gold belt over there too and challenging Sting before that. What a legacy he leaves. And I got to tell you, I know that a lot of, smart mark wrestling fans who are really into 5-star matches and things like that, they don't hold Sid in high regard. I have always felt like he is, if you could draw a pro wrestler, it might look something like Sid. and the facials and the way he would interact with the crowd. When I was a kid, you couldn't convince me he wasn't the baddest dude in the entire business. And now as an adult, he's still my guilty pleasure. You were one of the best big men in wrestling. Chat me up about Sid.
Yeah, it might look like Sid. It does look like Sid. That guy had a presence that was just unbelievable. I mean, it was earth shattering. His presence. First time I saw him, I believe, was at Kerry Von Erich's memorial on that when Kerry passed away, and I believe that's the first time I saw Sid. I remember sitting thinking, oh my God, look at this guy. I mean, they had those huge traps. He had that incredible body. I mean, Sid just had a presence about him that was it was shocking. When he came out, now I understand these guys, love these 5-star matches. I'm not trying to get in the debate of, all of this stuff, but I can tell you when Sid walked out, the entire arena noticed and they stood up. It was shocking when that big man, he had a presence that you couldn't coach. Now he had a size that, that just, was just God's gift, genetics, but plus he worked incredibly hard. Sid was a very, very hard worker to get to that body. I mean, Sid worked really hard, but that presence that he had, I mean, that's just, God gave him that. That was just unbelievable how shocking it was when he walked into an arena. Not a great worker, but people wanted to see him. So what is a great worker? I mean, the greatest matches of all time, I think, was Hogan versus Andre, and people will say, oh, that wasn't that good a match. Really? Okay, ask anybody about professional wrestling, and if they were alive back then, they will tell you where they were when Hogan slammed the Giant. That's how big that match was. That Sid was the same way. You can talk about work rate and all that. I'll take people selling tickets every time.
Big fan of Sid here, and I'm so happy that WWE is acknowledging him and putting him in the Hall of Fame. I wish that Sid would have been here to receive that induction, but I'm thankful that his family will have the opportunity. And I'm really glad that WWE on YouTube, they've started to upload a lot of great Sid stuff from their vault. I mean, I'll never forget as a kid. I don't know if you saw this, John, but there was an enhancement match in the WWF, and they would show a clip of this on the way to WrestleMania 8. He cut so many great promos on the way to WrestleMania 8, but he put a poor enhancement talent that he had just destroyed, and then they had to stretcher, to the back. He goes and commandeers the stretcher and just pushes him on the stretcher back down the aisle. He goes crashing into the ring post. The guy goes flying. And as a kid, I thought, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Hey, if it hadn't been for softball, Sid would have had a heck of a career. Sid would literally, that's the truth. Sid would leave during softball season. He loved softball. He had pro softball back then, but he wasn't making near as much money as, softball as he was in wrestling. He just loved softball. He loved hitting the ball a freaking mile, and he could. Sid was a terrific athlete. But if it hadn't been for softball, Sid would have really had a good wrestling career.
I know that JR always prioritizes, and he's talked about it on his podcast, Grilling JR, for years. The number one thing he looked for as the head of talent relations was reliability. But I always felt like, you know what? It kind of feels so on brand and very wrestling to have a guy like Sid be like, hey, I know I could come in here and make tens of thousands of dollars this month. Right. Or I could just go home, make no money, and play softball. You know what? I think I want to go home. And he just did what he wanted to do. And I don't know, maybe it's old school, but I like that he was like, not exactly Brody, but he did what he wanted to do is what I mean. And I think that's really cool.
I think it's awesome. I love guys like that. I've always loved guys. I'm the same way. There's so many guys that are so freaking talented. And, there's a lot of just kiss asses that'll show up to work every day. Most of those guys you don't want. You want guys like Sid. Sid, can we talk you out of playing softball this weekend? Because we have this pay-per-view called SummerSlam. We'd really like you to be at it. That's the kind of guy you want.
I hope that folks will investigate who the man Sid was too. He had a special needs neighbor, a young man, and he made sure he got that kid anything and everything he wanted wrestling wise, even being featured on WCW TV. Go ask a guy like Booker T what he thinks about Sid, and he'll be the first to tell you, hey man, Sid's a large part of my success. He vouched for us in a time when a lot of other people don't vouch for people in wrestling. Sid was always advocating for me and my brother. Those are sort of the type things you would hear from Booker T about Sid. And I got to ask, John, I don't know that you know the answer, so I'm going to put you in a bad spot because I know that this is the response a lot of people have, and I can admit I've asked it too. Why don't you think Sid was in the WWE Hall of Fame before now? Multiple time world champion, multiple WrestleMania main events. I know we sort of tongue-in-cheek joke about softball, but Vince didn't honestly believe that they would announce that Sid was going to be in the Hall of Fame and then no show it for softball, right? Like, that's not a real thing. Why do you think it didn't happen before now?
I don't know. And I don't know if it was some old animosity with, Sid was, Sid was his own man, and Sid was a good guy, by the way. I really like Sid. I traveled with Sid a little bit, room with Sid once. He's a good dude. Sid was a good guy, but he could be difficult to work with, I believe. Like a lot of these guys could, especially back in the day, a lot of guys could. And I don't know if Vince still had a little animosity from that or what it was. I'm not sure why, because everything about Sid and everything about his resume says that he should be in the Hall of Fame and should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago.
You know what's crazy is I kind of always countered that argument that people would say, oh, well, he didn't have a good relationship with Vince. He came back and beat up Heath Slater in 2012 in one of those throwback Raws. So it felt like, hey, if he was really, somebody Vince didn't want to be around, he didn't have to bring it back in 2012. Like, it wasn't necessary that we had Sid on that show. It wasn't even a show in Arkansas or Tennessee. It was a show in Indiana. But either way, it's never too late to go to the WWE Hall of Fame. I'm super happy for Sid Vicious and his family and the legacy that they are going to have and just a moment that they'll be able to cherish. That's going to be a frame photo in the entire family's house. And when I think about Sid, obviously there's that first run we talked about with Hogan on top. But, man, the stuff he did with Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series 96, these days people talk about, aura. And you want to talk about aura? Sid had that in a way that you can't bottle, you can't sell, you can't replicate. His entrance at Survivor Series 96 in Madison Square Garden was just next level, was it not?
He was as over as anybody. I mean, he was at one point, they thought he was the heir apparent to Hogan. And for all rights and reasons, people thought he was. I mean, he had a presence. Conrad, when he walked into the arena, that place went nuts. I mean, it's like Brock Lesnar or like Hogan. I mean, there's only a few guys that are like that, like Rock. I mean, there's just a few guys in the history of this business that are like that. Sid was like that. When he walked out, and Conrad, he was at his peak. He was so freaking big and such an incredible body. It was a powerful looking body. It wasn't like a bodybuilding body. I mean, you've seen the millions of pictures of it. It was just this powerful big guy, and he had that look about him. I mean, just that guy had an aura, and people thought he was the heir apparent. And whatever happened, Sid was a little bit difficult to deal with. He had softball season. He also thought he should have been the guy, instead of Shawn. I remember hearing Sid tell me about it, that he thought he was the guy, not Shawn. And so there was a lot of animosity there. But Conrad, a lot of top guys thought they were the guy as compared to another top guy. That's one of the reasons that these guys make it to the top, is because they have that belief in themselves.
How did you ever share a ring with Sid? Did y'all ever do any matches together?
Sure did. Yeah, we wrestled when Sid first came in. We wrestled, and Sid was supposed to go over, and he said, "I don't know," but me going over, and Sid was a little different, about his beliefs of things, and so Sid agreed to do a DQ, and I got heat on Sid, and they ended up getting powerbombed to the M. Dutch got powerbombed to the M. Hair was all over the ring once he got the grandfather, Dutch Mantel, got powerbombed. But it was Sid probably would have been better just going over clean instead of doing a DQ. But that kind of favored me. But that's what Sid wanted.
I find it interesting. It looks like that match may have been in Seattle, Washington, Monday Night Raw, July 22nd, 1996. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, Sid's one of his returns, and that was he was out there with me.
Let's talk about somebody else in the Hall of Fame. Mark Marrow was recently interviewed by Chris Van Vliet at the DDP Performance Center, and he was asked about whether or not Sable belonged in the WWE Hall of Fame. Mark Marrow had this to say: "Oh, absolutely. The women's division, they didn't really have a women's division so much back then at all. But she brought eyes to the channels. The ratings and everything were very high because of her. I think it has a lot to do with she's always wanted to be in the spotlight. And then she had a big part of the spotlight. And then getting married, they live a very private life. She just stays out of the spotlight. And that's what they chose, because she doesn't do wrestling conventions. I don't think she's ever at Raw or SmackDown with Brock. But that's just what they chose. And you got to respect that from her. I agree. It does feel like, man, Sable should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. I'm not asking you to betray any confidences, but I would imagine this is just a decision that her and Brock have made. Like, hey, they want to keep that part of their life private, or why don't you think Sable's already in the Hall of Fame?
From what I understand, or I guess that's what it is. I mean, Sable certainly has every right to be there. As far as her resume, she was a rock star, man. She was huge. I mean, she would walk out and the place would go nuts. She was one of the first women that we had on the cover of Playboy, sold a freaking ton of copies. She was she had a huge part of the Attitude Era. I mean, a huge part of its success. All of the Divas division, or whatever you called it back then, the women's division. She was a huge part of it. And she did a great job, everything she did. She did a great job in the ring. She did a great job out there at the ringside. Sable has every qualification in the world to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why she's not, and maybe that's a choice that they've made. Maybe it's a choice that WWE made. I don't know, but as far as merit, yeah, there's no doubt about it. She was a huge part of the Attitude Era, and she was an incredible star. And Conrad, I was there when she'd walk out. She was as over as anybody in our company, nearly. It was amazing, and she was a huge star.
Well, this year's Hall of Fame, we know, is going to be co-headlined by Stephanie McMahon and AJ Styles. Also going in as a tag team this year, finally, Demolition will be there. The celebrity announcement was also big this week. Dennis Rodman is now going to be a part of the WWE Hall of Fame. WWE, as part of that, has launched a whole bunch of NWO merch, including the retro merch. It looks just like the old Dennis Rodman NWO stuff that WCW sold. Now WWE has that. And now Sid Vicious. What a class this is, though. Stephanie, AJ, Demolition, Dennis Rodman, Sid. That's a heck of a class, don't you think, John?
It's a heck of a class, and I see those Demolition guys a lot. You know, I know Barry a little bit when I first started. Barry Dawson when I started. Didn't know Bill except for I met him, you know, the last few years. Really good guys, and I'm very happy for those guys. Those are good dudes. They deserve to be in there. You know, there's a little animosity going on with some lawsuits that have gone back and forth, and you know, now that's kind of water under the bridge. So I'm glad they're going in.
Well, it all happens this Las Vegas. It's WrestleMania week. And of course, the Hall of Fame is a part of those festivities. And today we're excited to announce a new sponsor to the show. I'm talking, of course, about Morgan & Morgan. They are America's largest injury law firm. They've been fighting for the people for over 35 years, and they've helped their clients recover over $30 billion. Now, not only are they one of our new sponsors here on the program, they're also the official law partner of WWE. And what I love most about Morgan & Morgan is that they're truly for the people, and they're coming in hot. They want to hook up one lucky fan with 2 tickets to WrestleMania 42 this April 18th and 19th in Las Vegas. That's right. One of you is going to go to Las Vegas to watch WrestleMania 42 live. In addition to the 2 tickets to WrestleMania, they're also giving this lucky winner $2,000 to cover their travel expenses to Las Vegas. Now, to enter, all you've got to do is text HEAT42 to the number 4, the people. Text HEAT42 to the phone number 484-373-6753 and follow the prompts. Don't miss out on your chance to see WrestleMania 42 live. Just text HEAT42 to for the people. Now, there's no purchase necessary. This is open to legal residents of the contiguous United States and DC who are 18 and older. The sweepstakes end March 29th, 2026. This is a paid advertisement. So, John, one of the other big pieces of business that happened since you and I spoke last, I couldn't believe this happened, but last Friday, you want to talk about a swerve, bro? Ted DiBiase Jr. was found not guilty. Not once, not twice, but on all 13 counts. Now, we talked about this last week, John, and it felt impossible. The person that the government had called co-conspirator received 32 years just at the state level. I don't think he's even been sentenced federally. And Ted Jr.'s own brother, Brett, took a plea deal for 5 years in prison. So it felt like insurmountable odds. And somehow, some way, Ted DiBiase was found not guilty, not once, not twice, but on 13 different counts. Of course, this is all related to the misappropriation of funds, the welfare funds from the state of Mississippi. And I know that a lot of people have already got their mind made up about Ted DiBiase. And I saw that comment over and over in the wake of the news that he was found not guilty. People saying things like, just because you were acquitted doesn't mean you weren't guilty. And I'm like, guys, he wasn't.
That's the definition of not guilty.
Yes, 13 times over. And listen, we can talk about the legal system another time, but if these are the rules, these are the laws, he's played it all the way. He's found not guilty over and over and over. But I do wonder, hey, what's next? What do you make of this news? I'm sure I saw you fist pumping. You're glad that Ted DiBiase.
I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. I said it last week. I love Ted. I love Ted Jr. Those are good dudes. I said last week they're good people, and I don't know what is going on. I hope that whatever works out best for them, what it needs to work out best for them works out. And then this thing comes out. And after I said it, I saw some comments on it, from typical freaking online trolls. Oh, you're so stupid. You don't know. Really? Here's the issue, Conrad. The government charged them. Okay. And then the jury said that the government had no case, that they're not guilty. But the problem is you only have one person speaking here. So you have the government speaking, saying, okay, they did this. People just take their word for it. I talked with Ted about it many times. Ted had told me his version of the story. And that version, the jury believed to be 100% to be true. And so there's two sides to every story, and people just want to take one side of it. You see allegations against people that are out there, and even when they're acquitted, those allegations stick. I just think it's the way social media works. I think it's just bullshit. I think it's terrible that that's how not our system works, how our social media works, that people are going to say you're guilty because one person or one group of people or a government has says, okay, we're charging you with this. All right. Well, that's one side of it. The other side is the DiBiase side. And the DiBiase side, the jury believed, not the government. So these guys, Ted came off as not guilty. Could not be more thrilled. I think Ted's a good dude. Ted and Ted Jr., I think they're both good guys. I'm very, very happy for the family.
I do want to ask you, John, one of the bad things about this at this point, at least in my opinion, is Ted DiBiase Jr. is forever going to be linked with this story.
Yeah,
for better or worse. Anytime you Google his name, any potential job opportunities or employment opportunities or, his kids and their relationships, like this is going to follow him around forever, even though he was found not guilty.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought about was, he's been in this lawsuit and defending himself for years. I mean, probably 5 years or more. And the idea that he's had to go through that means this was a very costly process.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm just venturing a guess. It might be 700,000, $1 million. It wouldn't surprise me when you're talking about defending yourself for that long. And by the way, it's not like when you win, the government says, hey, well, we were wrong. We're going to reimburse you and pay you back for your attorney fees. So now, his reputation is forever besmirched by Google and search engines around the world. But also, too, he's got to pay for this now. Like, this is a no-win situation for the DiBiase family, where it's like, on the one hand, I'm relieved that we won. But now it's like, damn, what now? Where do we go from here? This is not easy.
That's right. Our system is horseshit, an absolute horseshit. You've got people who can charge people with whatever they want. And if they can get these charges, or a judge to stick these charges on there and take it to trial. Now, if something happens and these charges prove that there's no merit to them, which is what this court case has done, those charges, like you say, Connor, it's like being called a racist. Somebody calls you a racist, somewhere out in the public somewhere, even if people come out and say, no, he's not a racist, and they prove you're not, that always sticks with the person. This always is going to follow Ted Jr. around. And the problem is we need loser pays in this country. When you have a frivolous lawsuit, and I don't care if it's the government, we don't need some moron from the government that can file suit on somebody, a private citizen. And if that suit proves meritless, that citizen goes bankrupt because they have to defend themselves against the entire government, the government should have to pay the legal fees of the person that has to defend themselves against a meritless case. And that's the problem that we have. We need loser pays in this system. So we don't need to have all these lawsuits that come out, all these allegations that come out. So at least when you get done, you don't have to say, okay, I proved myself that I was not guilty, but I still have this $1 million lawyer fee. That's where I think if the government loses, the government should have to step in and not play with company money and pay for the losers, pay as the loser, pay the legal fees of the other person.
Ted DiBiase did release a tweet. He's often been pretty private and pretty reserved in recent years on social media, but he did make a statement. A Mississippi jury has acquitted me on all charges. I'm forever indebted to nationally recognized trial lawyer Erich Hirschman, who guided my overall defense strategy and stepped in to masterfully cross-examine the government's star witness. I and my family are grateful to him and John Gonzalez of his firm, Hirschman, Benson, and Bauer, for their incredible commitment and loyalty. I've seen firsthand and agree with Ice Cube. Erich Hirschman is the best lawyer in the country. Thank you for defending my innocence and bringing the truth into light. Forever grateful. Now, the question is, what's next for Ted Jr.? I don't know if you saw, maybe it's a publicity stunt, maybe it's not. But as a reminder, once upon a time, Ted DiBiase Jr. was a member of the faction Legacy. And two of those members who were also in Legacy are the main event of Wrestle freaking Mania this year, Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. Now, you and I have absolutely no inside information, but from a storyline perspective, boy, this could get awfully interesting because it does feel like a lot of fans have already got their opinion and their minds made up about Ted DiBiase Jr. He has made headline news everywhere. It would be a compelling story. But it has been 13 years since we've seen him in a WWE ring. He most recently competed in WWE in 2013, and here we are 13 years later. But we did see, and I assume it was a stunt, someone on his team doing an interview, and we would see Ted in the background say, "Oh yeah, April 19th, book it." Now, of course, I think that's tongue in cheek, because I would imagine that Cody and Randy are going to be the night one main event, and that would be April 18th. Maybe he's going to be at WrestleCon or some other event on the 19th. We'll see. But this feels like a natural story for WWE if Ted has any interest. What do you think the odds of that happening are? Him coming back to wrestling and leveraging some of these headlines and maybe finding a way to pay that big ass attorney bill, John?
Good question. I think the odds, I like putting odds on stuff. It's fun for me. I think around 40%, just slightly under a coin flip, right? Slightly under 50%. I don't think it probably happens, but I think there's a chance it could. I think there's kind of a groundswell. I think Ted would get a huge babyface reaction, coming out having been acquitted of all charges. I know people are, there are people out there that won't believe it, but that's, and that's their prerogative. That's what they want to do. But I think you'd get a huge babyface reaction. I don't know, I don't know how much of the mainstream wrestling audience would be following this. Obviously the hardcore people are, people that are in the news, people that know Ted obviously are. So I don't know that. So that's why I put it slightly under 50%, but I'd love to see Ted to come back and do something.
I, for one, would absolutely love to see there be some sort of beat to his story. I don't think they necessarily need it WrestleMania weekend, but
yeah,
whatever Cody and Randy are doing at WrestleMania, it's unlikely to just end at WrestleMania. There's going to be follow-up at some point later in the year, and sprinkling him in at some point could be really, really entertaining. Let's talk about WrestleMania.
Yeah, and then real quick, Ted DiBiase Sr. was such a big character in WWE, that laugh, that $1 million laugh, and there was this black cloud kind of hanging over them. And now that black cloud has been lifted, it might be a good chance to do something, with him and maybe with Junior. I think it could be a pretty good TV segment, and they got Conrad, you know how it is. They've got 10 hours a week or whatever it is they got to fill. I mean, there's places to do this if they choose to.
Let's talk a little bit about, how that could work. As a reminder, of course, unfortunately, Dusty's no longer with us. But Bob Orton Jr. is still running around, and so is Ted DiBiase. And the idea that they lean into that real legacy and that real history, and I don't know, it could be fun. I got my fingers crossed. I'm hopeful for a good story, but I'm also wondering WrestleMania weekend. Hey, as we look around, what the hell's Gunther going to do? Now, I'm not saying you have any inside information. Certainly I don't, but
I don't.
When we're talking about Gunther, I think a lot of us can reconcile. All right, last July, he ended Goldberg's career on Saturday night's main event. And then, of course, in December, he ended John Cena's career on Saturday night's main event. And then at the Royal Rumble, he forced AJ Styles into retirement. And I think a lot of people were wondering, hey, we've built all of this up since last July. And the narrative is that WWE has trademarked the term career killer. So it felt like, okay, whose career is he going to take at WrestleMania? And there's been speculation. Hey, will it be Brock Lesnar? Well, we know he's going to be with Obafemi. Will it be Chris Jericho? We've never even seen Chris Jericho. But the rumor and innuendo is that he was going to wrestle Rey Mysterio. Now, that is not something I would say I was looking forward to, not because they wouldn't have a great match, but I want Rey Mysterio to wrestle forever. Don't you dare let him have his last match. I'm not ready for that. We need more. Well, somehow, some way, Ray has injured his ribs. And now there's a lot of people who are wondering, where does this leave Gunther? And I don't think a lot of fans who immediately jump to, oh, I can't believe they screwed this up. They don't blah, blah, blah. No one planned for an injury. Like whatever the story was here, when someone's injured, it's not like you can just slide someone else into that spot and it'd be a great story. What would make sense at this point for you, John? What do you as a fan want to see Gunther do this year at WrestleMania?
I think we need him. But I tell you what, he's going to get a babyface reaction at WrestleMania. I'm convinced that the huge European crowd, that European contingent, they're going to go nuts for him. In my opinion, I don't care what he does as a heel. They're going to freaking go nuts for him. It's going to be like Dom at WrestleMania when they go nuts for him. When they went nuts for him, I think it's going to be the exact same thing. I think and I'm sure they're prepared for that. I'm sure they know. They know exactly what I know, that's most likely going to happen. It's unfortunate when you have an injury, and I don't know if that's what was planned, but when you have an injury like that, shit happens. And you got to figure out plan B. And sometimes plan B is not what you want. And sometimes, Vince used to say, sometimes it's better you're not on television, instead of forcing somebody to be on. I think they'll find a spot for Gunther, but I'm not sure where that spot's going to be.
Do you think it could be some sort of celebrity integration? I mean, I don't pretend that I have any sort of plan or anything like that, but it does feel like, hey, if you can't get a Rey Mysterio, because it feels like what they're trying to do is make Gunther, for lack of a better word, like a heat monster. Hey, he took Goldberg from us. He took AJ from us. He took John Cena from us. He took Rey Mysterio from us. Well, if there is some sort of beloved celebrity, and I don't know exactly who that would be off the top of my head, could that be it? He just beats the snot out of a beloved celebrity?
He'll get over like $1 million doing it. It's not going to be an ounce of heat. I'm telling you, there's not going to be an ounce of heat. You bring any celebrity in there, and he's going to get over like $1 million, especially at WrestleMania with that European contingent. I'm just convinced. I saw Dom do it. I know that crowd. I've seen that crowd, how it's morphed over the years. And you bring in a celebrity, you're going to turn him huge babyface. Is that the right thing to do? I think it'd be great to do for him to come down and annihilate some celebrity. I think it'd be absolutely fantastic.
One of the celebrities that I'm curious about, and I'm not suggesting that this would be the Gunther spot, but I'm sure you've at least seen where Tom Brady and Logan Paul have been, jaw jacking a little bit, and then Gronk got into it. And of course, this was all to set up the celebrity flag football game that Netflix paid a freaking arm and a leg for, or Saudi, I'm sorry, paid an arm and a leg for. But now, as a reminder, WrestleMania, of course, is certainly going to feature Logan Paul. He's a mainstay with WWE, but it's also in Las Vegas. And some of our listeners are big NFL fans. They'll know that Tom Brady is part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, and one of Tom's best friends, certainly the one that we all know as a celebrity, if you will, is Rob Gronkowski. And he actually rubbed up against WWE back during the COVID WrestleMania. He's a big wrestling fan. I feel like, as crazy as this is, and I know some of our non-NFL fans who listen to this may not recognize what a big deal this is. If you've got a Tom Brady appearance at a WrestleMania, man, that's history. That's a big deal. This is the most decorated quarterback in the history of America's most beloved sport, the NFL. And I know he's controversial, but still, it would be a big deal to have him do anything in a WWE ring. Do you think we see Gronk or Tom Brady do something at WrestleMania?
First, I was there when Gronk was at the WrestleMania before, during the COVID year or whatever it was, and they wanted Gronk to do some spot, and of course there's no crowd there, and Gronk was like, "Are you sure that's safe?" Now Gronk's one of the, he's just super tough, one of the greatest tight ends, maybe the greatest tight end of all time, one of the greatest tight ends of all time. And Vince goes, "I'll show you." And Vince got up there in his suit and took a bump off that thing. And Gronk goes, "Okay, I'm fine." So, yeah, I think Gronk's fantastic. Gronk's made for this business. It's like Mojo Rawley is made for this business. His good friend. This is awesome, Conrad. I mean, you think about it. The greatest quarterback of all time, and maybe Joe Montana, maybe Bradshaw. 4-0, both those guys in Super Bowls. But Tom Brady is certainly in the conversation with anybody with all those freaking Super Bowls. You've got one of, if not the greatest quarterback of all time, but one of the biggest stars of all time. He's a terrific commentator. He's out there all over the news, has been forever, and he's talking about WWE. Now, is it good or bad? Who cares? It's awesome, the fact that Tom Brady is involved in all this. I don't know if the whole thing's a work, if it is or if it isn't. I don't know if it's working itself into a shooting itself into a work, one of the two. But I think Tom Brady doing something at WrestleMania, he seems like just a fun guy. He seems like he's having a lot of fun with this. When he threw the ball at Logan Paul during the football game, it seems like he's having a lot of fun with this. And I'd be shocked if he wasn't there in some way at WrestleMania. And I'd love to see Gronk there. That could be pretty cool.
It feels like I don't know exactly who's going to have Logan's back and how all this would work, but it does feel like there's going to be some sort of Gronk Tom Brady thing, and they become the baby faces and beating the snot out of Logan Paul or something. But I'm a huge fan of Gronk and Tom Brady, so I, for one, am looking forward to it.
It's great to think about it. We got one of the biggest stars in the world talking about wrestling. I mean, this is awesome. There's no downside to this. This is huge. I mean, God bless Logan Paul for getting all this, making all this happen.
Boy, there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are going to be upset with you, but I totally agree. Like, this is something that, Tom Brady would not be discussing WWE if it weren't for Logan Paul, in my opinion.
That's right.
And,
And if wrestling weren't so big, I mean, this is huge for wrestling. If wrestling was some little minor thing that, like it was at certain times in our history, Tom Brady wouldn't fool with it. But the fact that they're going to fill up the arena where he's a part owner of a team, I mean, that's huge. And Tom Brady knows this. He knows he's a brilliant guy, obviously. Anybody who can dissect defenses like he did. A guy led the league in passing when he was 45 years old or what it was and then retired. I mean, the guy is an multi-generational talent of all the different kinds of levels. This is great for wrestling.
What else is great for wrestling is Kill Tony. And I know that a lot of our listeners are going to disagree with that, but Kill Tony has become a juggernaut, not only on YouTube and as a live touring brand, but also on Netflix. Some of their biggest shows, I mean, they've had multiple shows from Madison Square Garden that were Kill Tonys that were live on Netflix. So clearly Tony Hinchcliffe, a huge wrestling fan. He used to do a podcast with some of his other comedian pals from the Comedy Store, and they would call themselves the Store Horsemen. I mean, so he is a big time wrestling fan, and he's bringing Kill Tony to the stadium at WrestleMania. Of course, it is West Coast, so they're going to get to do it after hours. I assume that it's going to be filmed, or maybe it's even going to be live on Netflix. But knowing that WWE and Netflix are so entrenched together, and the Kill Tony brand is obviously so closely affiliated and loved in the wrestling space, and they love wrestling themselves, the idea of the visual from a branding standpoint of Kill Tony and Netflix, this is a big deal. And I know that some fans maybe don't understand it or don't agree with it, but it is a Netflix integration, and it's probably going to help sell some tickets, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, wrestling being so big, we wouldn't have got guys like this years ago. There are times in our business that we couldn't get anybody to be a part of it. In the late 30s, you started to see guys, the Primo Canera and Bronco Nagurski that were coming into wrestling. Then you saw it again when Gorgeous George, you saw it again with Hogan, you saw it again with Rock. Now you're starting to see it on a level that is beyond probably even all of that. I mean, this is incredible. Everybody wants to be a part of this juggernaut that is WWE TKO. And that's a good thing. You may disagree with the guys, whether you like them or don't like them. It's great the fact that these massive stars want to be a part of wrestling, because that hasn't always been the case.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens with Kill Tony. I know that it was pretty controversial when they tried it before, but I'm interested to see how it's received this time, especially since it's going to be in a freaking stadium. The visual from a Netflix standpoint makes a ton of sense, and you got to assume WWE is going to get a major payday. So if tickets were slower and there's an opportunity to satisfy a sponsor, court some more attention, sell some more tickets, it checks a lot of boxes. Hopefully it's money for WWE, but WWE did get some money back. Allegedly, there's a report out there that Tama Tonga is in some hot water. There was word going around SmackDown that Tama Tonga was fined by WWE for posting a video of rehearsals the prior week. And the report says, quote, was told it was a significant fine. So I know once upon a time, this was considered like a no-no. And I guess it still is, because they're finding folks here. But isn't this the same company that puts out WWE Unreal? Where's the line? Talk to me about this, John. I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, look, I don't know as far as where the line is. I think talent releasing anything like this, this is, to me, this was always a fireable offense. You release something like that, you release secrets of your company. Now, if the company chooses to release that in a way that is canned in their WWE Unreal, which we can talk about that show in a different time, but that's the prerogative that they have to be able to look at that, edit that, figure out what they want to put out and what they don't. You can't have talent just putting out stuff like, here's a rehearsal, here's what's going on backstage, and letting stuff out like that. I completely agree with WWE for the fine for whatever the amount was. And if they'd have fired him, I'd agreed with it.
Wow, that's old school. I can't say I necessarily expected that. I do want to talk about unreal. But I got to tell you, I think that it's a little stiff. If it was a significant fine, I could see how I might be.
Yeah, and Conrad, I can agree with that. I mean, I think the young people and that's why I don't, a fireable offense. My generation, yeah, you fire a guy because we knew better, 100% knew better. No, I don't know that the talent today knows better, and that's a matter of education, not a matter of intelligence. You don't know unless somebody tells you. And so I think you get a slap on the wrist, you get a pretty big fine. I don't know what the big fine was. I'm sure it hurt his pocket pretty good. Some guys with money, if you fine them $10, it's like they lost their home. They're cheap guys. But I think it's appropriate to slap on the wrist, let it be water on the bridge at that point, and forget about it. I don't think it should carry forward anywhere in his career, anything going forward about as far as being held against him in any ways. I think once it's done, it's done. That's one thing Vince was very good about. When Vince would find somebody or would punish somebody, that was it. And it was over. And Vince forgot about it after that. And I think that's what should happen with this young man.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens with Tama Tonga. I'm a big fan of him personally, and I'm looking forward to him having a successful career on the other side of this. But speaking of stiff, can we talk about Blue Chew here for a minute? Blue Chew Gold is the latest innovation from the #1 chewable ED brand. It's not your grandpa's little blue pill, though, buddy. This is the 4-in-1 beast that's setting the gold standard for performance. We've got 2 ingredients for blood flow to keep that rocket pumping, mixed with apomorphine and oxytocin to turn up the arousal and connection in your brain and body. Blue Chew Gold dissolves under your tongue. It works in as little as 15 minutes, and that means you can get it on quicker and stay in the game longer. Elevation without hesitation, peak passion, and peak performance all in a single tablet. If your bet could talk after this, it'd be asking for a break. Make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at bluechew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month of Blue Chew Gold with the promo code WRESTLE. That's promo code WRESTLE. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. So listen, one of the great things about this new WWE Unreal show is we can't really tell, at least I can at times, hey, what's a storyline that they're using Unreal to tell and what's real? And maybe that's what we love about pro wrestling. Well, here's what we know is real. It was reported earlier this morning as we're recording that WWE Unreal on Netflix has been nominated for 3 Sports Emmy Awards. Outstanding Sports Documentary, Outstanding Sports Editing, long form, Outstanding Sports Graphic Design, Specialty. Triple H, of course, is taking a victory lap, bragging about this. But hey, critical acclaim coming down for Unreal. Maybe not from LA Knight, though. LA Knight was recently doing a podcast on the Bootleg Kev podcast, and he talked about his appearance on Unreal Season 2. And he says that has actually changed how he conducts himself backstage now. Specifically, they're talking about the moment where they had the Money in the Bank match last year. He comes back through the curtain and he crouches down next to Triple H, who gives him some instruction. Now, the producer for that match was Chris Park. We know him as Abyss. And in the program, he explained the original planned finish and exactly what was supposed to happen in that Money in the Bank match. And it didn't go down exactly as they had hoped. So now there's a conversation after that happens on camera. And LA Knight says that he was holding back significantly more than what viewers saw on the screen. Quote, I was majorly holding my tongue in that scenario, if you could tell, because I had my own frustrations about that situation that partially had to do with the finish, but more so it had to do with an overarching theme that I don't need to get into the weeds about here. He also revealed that he was unaware he was being recorded during the exchange with Triple H, and that prompted a behavioral change moving forward. Quote, I had no idea I was on a microphone at that time. And so with that being the case, I don't even stop there in Gorilla anymore. When my match is over, my segment is over, I go straight through and I go to the locker room. Knight said he remains open to discussing what happened in his matches, but on his terms. Quote, if they want to talk to me about my match or whatever happened out there, sure, let's talk about it when there's not a microphone or camera around, because that's how it's always been. And with that being the case, I'm not going to stop in there and leave myself susceptible to that. So we know that WWE is working on a third season for Unreal, but I see this and I wonder, A, is this a story and it's going to reveal itself on camera on Raw or SmackDown or something like that? Or is this real? And is it a real frustration and we're airing dirty laundry? Either way, I think that's why I like wrestling. I can't tell all the time. Hey, is this real or not? What do you make of this?
Yeah, I don't know, and that's what I love about wrestling. I do love that, I've always thought that Unreal is the perfect way to work people, because people are not expecting to be worked during Unreal. Now, I don't have no idea if this will work or not. I don't have any inside information, but I would use, and I no doubt they're going to use WWE Unreal to further storylines. And I think it's brilliant to do that. It's a great product, I'm not so sure about opening up the kimono that much, but that being said, Conrad, I don't know. And so I'm not against it. I look at these arenas and going out there to Vegas and they're going to fill up football stadiums back-to-back nights. We didn't do that. And, so they're doing something right. And so I hold judgment as far as, do I think it's good? Do I think it's bad? I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. It does that, but so what? Go walking out in front of, 70,000 people does not make me feel uncomfortable. So something is right about it. But Conrad, the business has changed significantly. Guys, when I was there, would just walk through the grill anyway. If Vince wanted to see you, he'd call you over. Now guys, I sit there and watch them. They all want to go in there and be put over and be told how great they are. And, they stop off and want to talk, of that stuff. So that's why, all that happens, and so if you want to walk through and if they want to holler at you, then yeah, that's, but you got to expect microphones to be on. You got to expect cameras to be on, and you got to expect stuff to be recorded. There's cameras everywhere there. We used to talk before the show. We always be very careful about what we'd said, just joking around, because, microphones are on everywhere. I'd sit out there in ringside with Michael Cole all day long, because I'd sit out there so you could see the rehearsals and stuff and be available to talent. You always knew that microphones were on, cameras were on. You've got to assume that, and to not, that's how you get yourself in situations like this, and that which you look back on and you think, I wish I hadn't have done that, and that's apparently where LA Knight is right now.
I'm excited to see if this is a story or not, but I'm with you. I love that we can't really tell. I know one of the major arching themes of season 2 was all about the John Cena retirement tour, and John Cena was in Orlando at MegaCon this past weekend, and he was asked about his potential future with WWE. And I'm happy to report that he says he's been trying to figure out how he'll be contributing to WWE. Quote, "I'm working diligently to try to figure out my next path as far as contributing as a useful member of WWE. I think I might crack the code, and I think we have something. And if the stars align and everybody signs off, it will be a whole lot more integrated in the system. And I'm very excited about the road ahead. I'm just crossing my fingers that it works." And that made me excited. I think I love the idea of John Cena. Maybe he is done in the ring, but that doesn't mean he can't still be a valuable team member or an entertainer for WWE. But the question is, John, if you had the pencil, what would you book John Cena to do? Would he be your Jesse Ventura and do commentary? Would he be a GM? What is the highest and best use for John Cena in WWE in 2026, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think GM, because that's a regular occurrence, and I think that's almost, I don't know. I'm not certainly not beneath John, but I think it uses him in a way that it's probably not to his advantage. I think he needs to come in just as a special star and be that guy that when he walks in, and I think it's almost too much to have him be a regular character. I think it'd be great to have that, but if you're a regular character, don't be deemed a regular character. Just kind of show up regularly, kind of like The Rock does for a while and then kind of leave. John's a huge star. He's a huge star outside of wrestling. And so I think the ways to use him is sporadically, to bring him in for different things with different people, to give people a rub and make him a character. I say a character. He's John Cena, but be the John Cena character as he comes in, involved in certain different storylines.
Well, I, for one, can't wait to see what's next for John Cena. I don't know that we're going to ever see him in the ring again, wrestling a match, but that doesn't mean he couldn't be involved physically. Maybe we'll see him do something at WrestleMania. Fingers crossed that we see John Cena sooner rather than later. Hey, let's talk a little bit of old school. I want to talk to you a little bit about Chris Jericho, and I want to talk to you about Brock Lesnar. But right now, I think we should take just a few minutes and talk about our friends over at Policy Genius. You know, you and I have lived a couple of very blessed lives, John, and every now and again, I'll start thinking about how blessed we are. But I also know that at different times, it can feel like it's a stressful proposition to be the person responsible for providing for your family. You know, you have a responsibility as the man of the house to take care of everything. And man, sometimes you wonder, have I done a good job? Am I on the right track? And I think one of the things that a lot of us can lean on for peace of mind is life insurance. And you can get some help with that weighty responsibility of protecting your loved ones and having the right financial planning without it all being overwhelming. That is, if you look for our friends at Policy Genius. I trust Policy Genius, and I want you to know that their licensed team works on your behalf, so you know that the guidance they're going to give you is for your needs. I'm a big believer in this product because it's all about peace of mind. That's why I want you to lock in life insurance, but do it a smart way with Policy Genius. Let me explain. This is an online insurance marketplace that allows you to compare quotes from some of America's top insurers side by side, and they can do it for free. Their licensed team helps you get what you need fast so you can get on with your life. You can easily find what you need: the coverage amounts, the prices, the terms. There's no guesswork, just clarity. Policy Genius helps you find the most affordable policy that meets your needs. They answer the questions, handle the paperwork, and advocate for you throughout the process. Policy Genius has thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best policy fit for their needs. So protect the life you've built with Policy Genius. You can see if you could find a 20-year life insurance policy starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Just head on over to policygenius.com/wrestle to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/wrestle. And we're back here on Something to Wrestle with a brand new segment that we debuted last week, John. Wrestle Worth. I've had a lot of fun last week. We got to catch up with our buddy Tony, and we actually broke down the value of some pretty cool things. We were able to authenticate and really value Stone Cold Steve Austin's very first knee brace. He wore it at WrestleMania 13, 14, and 15. Of course, this comes on the heels of Fanatics selling his one of 2 knee braces used in his final match at WrestleMania 38. It went for $58,000. Of course, most recently, the entire collector world has been upside down about the Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 1 boot selling for more than $1 million. And we threw out the gauntlet last week and said, hey, if you've got something that you collected through the years and you might be interested in getting it evaluated. So we're not necessarily saying you have to commit to selling the item, John, but just you want to know, hey, what is this wrestling collectible worth? That's what we're going to do here on this segment. We're calling it Wrestle Worth. And if you've got an item that you'd like to learn what it may be worth, send us your pictures and your story behind the item to wrestleworth@gmail.com. And when you do that, if we select your item, we'll bring on our pal Tony from Heritage Auctions and chat about what it's worth. I absolutely loved our segment last week, John. I'm excited to do this again today.
Yeah, me too. You know, one thing we should ask also is how do they get them?
Yeah.
Because people come up with this stuff. You know, how do you get this stuff? I mean, I don't know how you end up with Stone Cold's knee brace. I mean, there's obviously a tail to it, which is pretty cool. And somehow that thing got in somebody's hands. But I think it's also pretty cool if you let us know the story about how you got it.
That is the best part. You know, it's almost our internet version of WWE's Most Wanted Treasures that they've aired on A&E. Except instead of it having, you know, a 9-month cycle after they shoot something and then it airs on TV, we're doing it week to week. So if you've got an item that you've collected, maybe it's in your man cave, it's on your mantle, it's on a shelf at work, and you wonder, hey, I wonder what that's worth. Drop us an email, wrestleworth@gmail.com. And when we welcome in our guest today, he'll let you know what it's worth. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. My pal and yours, Tony from Heritage Auctions. Tony, how are you, man?
I am great. I'm excited to be here. And JBL made a great point, and I say it all the time. When you're buying some of these pieces, you're buying the piece, but you're also buying the story to the piece. And there's a lot of these items, some of the game used items, some of the match used items that have a very interesting story to them. And that's what keeps people coming back, is the stories behind the pieces a lot of times.
Well, you mentioned last week here, Tony, that you're going to be featuring a lot of the items that are coming up in the May auction from Heritage Auctions this year at WrestleCon. So if you're in Las Vegas, you definitely want to stop by and see the Heritage Auctions booth. That's where you'll see some really cool things, including the $1 million WrestleMania 1 Hulk Hogan boots. Yes, you can see them in person at WrestleCon. And a little bit of an update from last week, John. Tony and I caught up off air, and he sent me all of the pertinent paperwork and shipping information. And later today, I'm headed to FedEx, and the WCW United States title is headed to Heritage Auctions. It's going to be at WrestleCon, John. Are you proud of me?
Yes, I am. I'm excited to see it. All those great champions that wore it, a lot of friends of mine, and a lot of terrific legends, Hall of Famers. That's a pretty cool title belt.
Stop by the Heritage Auctions booth at WrestleCon. You'll be able to see the WCW United States title held by Steve Austin, Sting, Lex Luger, Vader, Ricky Steamboat, and so many others. But Tony, you've got another item.
Hey, Tony, wait, before we go, Tony, how do you still have the Hogan boots? Have they not been actually? Has the sale actually not been formalized?
No, it has gone through. It's the owner. We talked to the owner and asked him if he'd be able to allow us to have them at WrestleCon, and he agreed to allow us to have them at WrestleCon. So it was a very nice gesture, and it's going to be pretty cool because we're going to have the boots, we're going to have the belt, and people can take photos with both of them. Obviously, they're going to be under glass, and we're gonna have a security guard and all that, but people can take photos of these, and it's so people can kind of enjoy them as well. So we're really excited that the winning bidder allowed us to have them there, and I can't wait to see them again, because if you look on the inside of them, there's really good use. There is some blood actually on them, and and a lot of times these things will get used so much that there's nothing left, but these are in very nice shape yet, and come by, take photos with them, and we're excited to have them there.
Now, Tony, I got to ask you a medical question with this. Is this kind of like Jurassic Park, like you had like brontosauruses and like pterodactyls and things where you have the blood of Hulk Hogan? Can you actually bring the Hulkster back?
It hasn't quite gotten to that level yet, but it will at some point where you can test the blood and everything on them, but hasn't quite evolved to that at this point. But
we can't clone Hogan yet.
Not quite yet. No, we're working on it.
I may call Raymond Reddington and Dembe and see if I can't try to arrange a little procurement of those items there in Vegas.
I've got some other blood that we have on some of the other items that we've got, and we can maybe work on some other guys as well.
Hey, Tony, you've been in the sports collectible business for a long time. I guess I've never even thought to ask this. But man, when you just say blood in a traditional collector context, it feels weird, but somehow in wrestling, it makes sense. So I guess I'm asking, have you ever seen like baseball or basketball or hockey or any of the other sports where there were blood-stained items that were available?
Oh, wait a minute. No, don't even. What the hell no. The King, Nolan Ryan, Ventura.
Very good call.
Yes, sir. They're selling right
now,
now, and I'm going to get one. They're selling like a replica jersey of Nolan because when he bled, of Nolan Ryan's jersey.
So that jersey, I don't know where it ended up. Probably got thrown away, but the famous one we had Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, which we sold probably about, I want to say about 15 years ago for, at the time it was like $98,000. The first one that he wore got thrown away, actually. This was the second one that he had, the sock. But, blood on jerseys. Typically, you'll see it on hockey jerseys. I remember seeing a Bob Probert that was very bloody. You'll see it on football. You'll see it on hockey. Baseball, basketball, not as much. But those would be the two sports that you'll see typically better use. But, a lot of hit marks on uniform, on football jerseys. On hockey jerseys, you get stick marks. That's what you'll typically see on that, with team repairs as well. So those are the two sports. With wrestling, you do see some you'll see it on occasion because, again, they would wear these and wear them. And it's not like they had 5 different pairs of trunks. A lot of guys, they would just they would just keep wearing them. And yes, they'd get washed, but we've got a pair of trunks that I've got here that do have some blood still on them. So that is one thing that I'm not saying it helps authenticate them, but it gives it personality, I would say.
What do you I don't know what to say about the bloody sock auction. I never even imagined that was an item. I remember that game very well from 2004, but the idea that somehow wound up in an auction is fascinating to me. But
I want to see the person who bought it.
I'd have to go through the archives. I could, and the thing was, they don't really have a mannequin for a sock, so they had to get creative with it, and because you had to form it, but. And so many times, and I know we talked about the Hogan boots and, the sock, people pay for those moments, those historic moments. A lot of times people, they remember where they were when it happened. And there's so many times people will really pay to have that moment forever. And that's an instance where $98,000 for a single sock is a record to this day yet. But if it's sold today, it would probably definitely be over 100,000.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Let's talk a little bit about some other items that maybe folks can see at WrestleCon this year. You sent me a picture last week that I guess there's another item that maybe it's from one of the more recent favorites, a fan favorite who left us way too soon. Tell us about the item that we're going to be talking about today, and I guess you're going to be featuring it at WrestleCon.
Yeah, we've got a pair of Bray Wyatt's boots that were used early in his career when he was in NXT, but also followed him to WWE as well. And he did a great job signing these, did the NXT with the very nice signature. And, we were looking at photos from NXT, and he's sitting in the chair, and he's wearing these exact boots. And back during that time, they didn't make a lot of money, and they didn't wear a lot of different outfits because, again, they didn't have a ton. And these boots show great wear. You can see the black mark just below the autograph, and then you can see, and they're still in great shape yet too. And there's multiple photos, provide photo match style matches of these exact boots. And Bray Wyatt's one of those guys that to pull off his character, incredibly difficult, and he could reinvent himself. And he was, at such an elite level that I think as the next generation goes on, he's a guy that's always going to be remembered in the wrestling business because he was just different. He was not the norm. He's a guy he could pull off the Fiend. He could pull off being very, very creepy. It's a hard thing to do. And he was amazing at it. His mic skills were off the charts. He could wrestle. And I think when, as this starts to evolve, he's one of those guys. You're right. He left way too early. And you almost get chills when you see some of these items, thinking they were on the road for how long, how many events they were at. And again, great use, not overuse. They're in great condition. You can put them in your man cave, and they look really, really good.
So Tony, do we know any specific matches that this is associated with? I know you mentioned NXT and his first main roster run as the Bray Wyatt character. So I would imagine that would include matches with Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan and John Cena. Do we know if there's a WrestleMania type event attached to these boots?
We're still doing the research, but I know there's an NXT program that they were featured on. And I know there were a couple different instances where he's wearing them sitting in that chair, rocking back and forth, and it's the same pattern, the same design. We'll be doing more research once we write them. We'll be going and trying to find more matches because now in this hobby, in this industry, photo matching has really turned it upside down. Obviously, with the Hogan boots getting to the number that they got to, it was because of photo matching. So we're going to be doing a little bit of work on those and trying to, find as long as possible that he wore this particular model.
Hey, Tony, question about this. He was, I guess, Bray was what, Husky Harris?
He was in the beginning,
yep. First character, first iteration, but, as real wrestlers, we always went through, very few guys ended up with what they started with. You think it's a great idea, and you do it, and then realize you morph into something else. Harley Race was Jack Long, I believe it was. When he first started, Gerald Briscoe has a signed Jack Long photo. What is the parameters of being worth more? Is like you have like an old Harley Race, like a Jack Long photo, you have a Husky Harris. How does that work as far as value for objects about what they've signed? Because when I go to signings, a lot of times I will ask people, I'll say, look, I was Bradshaw in this picture. Do you want me to sign Bradshaw or do you want me to sign JBL? And, and it's up to them. And a lot of times people say, I want you to sign JBL, or no, you were Bradshaw. Does it matter much as far as collectors?
I think it does, because I think people want to have something signed from their favorite character. Mankind, Mick Foley, is a perfect example of this. There's a lot of images of him where he'll sign all three: Do Love, Mankind, Cactus Jack. So I would, for me personally, I think in the future, the one that really stands out to me was the Firefly Firehouse. I think there's going to be a day where that material, because he did it for kind of a short period of time. And I think some of the stuff that he wore during those episodes is going to have some good value because it was so different for its time. I think some of the Firefly Firehouse, obviously the Fiend mask is kind of the holy grail for him because, again, that would be his final character. And it was also so far out when he did that. And it was creepy. It was creepy. I remember when they burned his body, and it was a big deal when they did that. And I would think the Fiend, obviously, like Stone Cold, you don't think of him as Stone Cold Steve Austin, not stunning Steve Austin from the early WCW days as much. So I would say the one that's the main characters where people are really going to gravitate towards and really collect a little more so than anything else.
I saw Gangrel get burned one night. He wasn't supposed to be.
Really?
It was the rehearsal when he got burned. I was watching it. And I thought, man, this is really cool. This looks like it's burning them alive, and it was.
It was actually.
Yeah, it was. They created a vacuum. They come up with in the elevator, through the stage, and they had the fire coming up with them. And it obviously wasn't supposed to happen, but they created a vacuum, and it sucked all the fire in with him, and it looked absolutely awesome because you think, this is awesome. How's he not burning alive? Then you realize he is burning alive.
Oh my God.
Well, Tony, tell us about these Bray Wyatt boots. That's why people tune into this. What do you think these boots are worth? Since we've been chatting, I have been over on the WWE website, and I found a ton of images of Bray Wyatt wearing these boots, specifically as a part of the Wyatt family or the leader of the Wyatt family in the NXT era. I'm sure there's lots of main roster moments as well, but those are just readily available, and it looks like there's dozens of photos that you could photo match these to. So in your professional opinion, when these go to auction, what do you think that they'll fetch, and when can fans take a look at that item as an auction item?
So these are going to have a $20,000 estimate. The opening bid, we open everything at 25% of the estimate. So these will open at $5,000. That's a conversation that's always kind of interesting with a consigner, because a lot of times people are like, I think it's worth more, and can we start them higher? I like that we're starting these at $5,000, and these are really going to be the first pair of Bray Wyatt boots from NXT, at least, that are going to sell. And I think it's going to get a lot of bids early on, and then people wait toward the end to bid. And I think it's going to exceed the 20,000 estimate, just because everything right now is up. The market is really solid, and you're going to get that whole boost of WrestleMania, having them at the event, having them at WrestleCon, and they're nice looking boots as well. You've got the snaps on the sides, you've got the white leather, and you got the black leather on the tips and on the heels. So they're good looking boots. I think they're going to far exceed the 20,000 estimate on them.
JCW Lunacy. New episodes every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. For over 25 years, JCW has delivered the very best in pro wrestling entertainment, bringing fans deep storytelling drama, gut-busting comedy, and unbelievable in-ring action. From wild characters to unforgettable rivalries, don't miss a single moment. Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. JCW Lunacy.
Dave Miller wrote us a great story that said, hey, back in 2021, High Spots announced they were going to auction items from Jimmy Garvin's personal collection. Jimmy had saved a ton of memorabilia from guys he worked with, especially Wahoo and David Von Erich. Conrad knew I was going to be a player in that auction, and he told me to shoot my shot with Garvin before it ever hit the block. He even put me in touch with Garvin's rep, so I did. I made an offer and went all in right up to my max. They countered, and of course, it turned out my true max was another $1,000. The wild part is I couldn't just buy the trunks. It was a package deal. I also had to take a Fritz Von Erich Zippo lighter, a David Von Erich t-shirt that was sold by the promoter in San Antonio, a photo of David versus Bruiser Brody mounted to a piece of wood made by a fan and gifted to David. Honestly, I believe if those items had made it to auction, I never would have gotten them. So there you see it. The trunks from a pretty phenomenal performer. There's our buddy Dave. You've probably heard us refer to him on some of the podcasts as Pondwater Dave or Super Dave, independent wrestling referee in the Mississippi area and a heck of a good guy. But I can't believe it. He has decided to part with those trunks, and you see Dave did a great job getting it framed there. I know that's going to be something that's near and dear to your heart, John. John, have you seen that before? Look at the way Dave framed it. That's a pretty cool way to display these.
I've never seen that before, but that Zippo lighter of Fritz, that is cool.
Yes.
That is something I would love to have. That's awesome.
Well, so, talk to us about this, as you take a look at this item and the story and the provenance, I guess is the right word. How Dave got these. What do you think these Von Erich trunks could be worth?
So we're going to estimate these at 10,000 plus. We dealt with Kevin Von Erich and the family about 4 years ago now, and they put in some of the items from their collection. There wasn't much from David, unfortunately. I mean, he was the first one to pass away. And what I love about these trunks, because we had a pair of Kevin's, and they were just straight yellow. These have the black on the side, but if you look really close, Texas, I think, was in sequins on these at one time. So that Garvin gave them to Dave, and they came straight from David Von Erich. The Von Erich family has a very big following. I watched them when I was up in northern Wisconsin as a kid in syndication, and now I'm in Dallas, Arlington, world-class area, and they are revered in Texas. They're revered in the South, and they're also overseas. There's a lot of collectors of the Von Erichs as well, because they were the first family in wrestling, and they really helped to make this more and more mainstream worldwide, and there's just not much out there. And when I went out there to visit the family, they had a few jackets, they had some photos, they had actually had some autographs that did really well in auction. But as far as the ring worn stuff, it was more, they had Mike, they had a little bit of Kevin, but David's the one that I think we all know was going to be the champion if he had lived longer. And just a historic piece of wrestling memorabilia. Again, I like that it's a 10,000 estimate. We're going to open them at 2,500. I think these are going to go for much more than that, though, too, because the Von Erich family is just, like I said, it's royalty. There's great use on them. There is some blood mixed in there, so I will say that. But of course, there's more with the black on the side, but also that Texas. You got to really look close. If you zoom in, you can see where you can see the outline of where it was, and that these were given to Garvin, and Garvin gave them to Dave Miller. That's a big, big deal, because the lineage of this piece, and it's not like this thing sold 5 different times. It's a great piece of Von Erich history. Great use. They're not torn apart. The drawstring is still in them. And we're very excited to have these at WrestleCon.
John,
Hey, Tony,
you were
I'll
a
tell
big
you how
fan
big
of-
a celebrity the Von Erichs are in Texas. Late last year, I was at my local country club there in Athens, Texas, and some guys were talking about some local guy. They said, "Man, that guy he's huge. He's a celebrity." And the guy, one of the guys goes, "He's like a Von Erich." This was 2025, and the Von Erichs have not been on top, in wrestling, good Lord, 30 to 40 years.
Mhm.
But they still are that revered. When people think about celebrities in Texas, they still talk about Von Erichs as being that's the absolute cream of the crop. And
Absolutely.
David was the heir apparent. David was the guy that if he had lived, the territory probably would have looked completely different. You might have had some competition coming out of Texas. That really the territory really suffered. And the other thing I have is, where'd Jimmy Garvin get these?
He got him directly from David. I think after the feud was over, what I was told at least, after the feud was over, Garvin asked Von Erich if he had, if he could have
Really?
his trunks. Yeah. And that's how we got
the
him.
guys, now changing jerseys and stuff. Garvin was doing it back then.
Wow.
He was ahead of the game by 30 years. He beat everybody. But the Von Erichs, I think the movie also brought them back into the forefront as well. That the movie helped a great deal because that introduced the next generation to the family. And I'm 49, and when I was a kid, Saturday night it was World Class. Then it was NWA was right after it, and so even as a kid in northern Wisconsin, we watched them, even though we were an AWA country. And so the Von Erichs, we knew them from I knew them from when I was a kid, and I always wish to this day that I could have seen the Sportatorium. I know it wasn't much, but you heard about it. And when I moved here in 2012, it was demolished. It was gone. And that's one of the things I wish I could just walk through it one time just to see it.
You need a hard hat and freaking surgical gloves on. That was the nastiest, rottenest place, but greatest arena in the world.
Well, let's take a look at one last item. Tony, you motivated me last week on our conversation about the WCW United States belt, and I actually acquired something way back in 2013 that I've had displayed for a long time on top of my bookcases in my home studio. But they're headed your way. They're going to be at WrestleCon. They're from my favorite promotion, ECW. These are the entrance letters that were used from before WrestlePalooza in 1998. They started appearing on TV around April of 98, and they were used through the end of ECW. We've got a lot of images here that you can take a look at on somethingtowrestle.com. That's our totally free YouTube. But we've got these letters here, and Tony, the barbed wire has been removed. By the time I received the actual letters, the barbed wire was already off. But I got pretty heavy into collecting in 2013. I landed the big gold belt and some Ric Flair robes and some other items. But one of the things I was able to secure was the very first ECW World Heavyweight Championship. And around that same time, I was also able to get one of the ECW arena signs. And I guess the word got out. And as the story goes, and John, you're probably familiar with this, as the narrative goes, a lot of guys at the end of ECW did not get paid. Well, that apparently included even members of the ring crew. So as a result, someone who was responsible for carrying these to the different shows and setting them up, he's had them in his garage this entire time from 2001 to 2013. We brokered a deal. They showed up at my house in a giant UPS box, and now they're headed to WrestleCon. You can see these iconic ECW entrance letters used before WrestlePalooza 98 all the way to the end. So a lot of wrestling fans point to like Heatwave 98 as being perhaps the best ECW pay-per-view of all time. These were used at that event and almost every other major moment in ECW history. Tony, if you had to guess the value of my ECW entrance letters, what would you guess that these will bring? And what will the reserve be in the May auction over at Heritage Auctions?
I would do 10,000 on these. I think ECW, there's going to be a day, and it's going to be very soon, that true wrestling fans are going to be looking for ECW material. It was a renegade league, and Paul Heyman was it was so different for its time, and it just has its own, there's a cult collecting part of this whole thing for ECW. There's not a lot out there. The toys, they did some figures, I believe. there just isn't much out there because a lot of the stuff they used was literally thrown away. They didn't have a very big budget, obviously. I remember watching it when I was a kid, and I'm like, what the heck is this? There's no commercials. They were homemade commercials, I think. And this one is very, very interesting to me because there's a lot of rabid wrestling fans, and there's a lot of ECW fans. They weren't the norm. They survived just by being different than everybody else. And I think this sign is going to surprise us all because there's just not much out there from ECW. And it's something you can find when you go back and watch the episodes of it, watch the videos. You're going to see that sign prominently featured. And I can't wait to see the reaction of fans at WrestleCon with that sign because ECW was just different. And there's just not much out there of it. You may see some tickets occasionally, but the wrestlers, they didn't, it's not like they were wearing these great, big, crazy robes. They wore T-shirts and whatever they had, kendo sticks and that kind of thing. So I can't wait to see that. And I know it's going to cause a buzz at WrestleCon. I'm telling you right now, to the true wrestling fan, that's a holy grail piece. It really, truly is.
I think you're going to like taking a look at the letters too, Tony, because you can actually see the indentations from the barbed wire. It was real barbed wire. And as I said, the barbed wire is not there now. It was, I'm sure, removed for shipping or just storing in this guy's garage as long as he did. But you can clearly see the marks where it's pressed into the sign. I'm excited for you guys to see it. It is going to be at WrestleCon. And if you've got something in your man cave, you've got something in your home office, you've got something in your mantle or your storage facility, maybe it's in your attic and you wonder, hey, I wonder what that's worth. Well, let us know. Tell us how you got the item. Send us pictures of your item and we'll have Tony discuss what he thinks the hypothetical value could be. But everything that we featured today, the Bray Wyatt boots, the ECW entrance letters, and the David Von Erich trunks, they're all going to be at WrestleCon. You'll be able to see them in person. And of course, you'll be able to check them out in the Heritage Auction this May. If you've got an item and you want to know what it's worth, let us know. Send us an email, wrestleworth@gmail.com. We want your pictures. We want your story. And Tony, we appreciate all your time, man. I can't wait for fans to check out WrestleCon. And hopefully we've got some cool stuff for you to look at next week.
This is my favorite part of the week. I love this. I'm in my element when we're doing this. And yeah, send us anything. It could be a ticket stub, a photo, an autograph, whatever you have. Nothing's too big, nothing's too small. Send it to us and we can get you an evaluation of it.
And we're cloning Hogan.
Yes. And David Von Erich, because there is some blood on these David Von Erich. Yeah.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Absolutely. I found an action figure. I thought it was Conrad. It turned out it was one-man gang.
We'll see what that's worth next week right here on Something to Wrestle.
We'll get Conrad to sign it.
Stay tuned, folks. Thanks so much, Tony. We greatly appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
If you manage a crew, construction, HVAC, landscapers, whatever, you already know when your guys pay for gas and materials, it causes all types of issues. Cards get borrowed, trucks fuel up when they're parked in the yard, and your accountant is chasing you for receipts at the end of the month. Coast Pay fixes all that. Coast Pay is the modern fuel card and expense management tool that is built for fleets. This isn't software built by someone who's never run a crew. Fuel, maintenance, and materials are now all on one card with real control and instant visibility. Set real-time spending limits for every driver or vehicle. Fuel only, fuel and materials, certain days or certain hours, you decide and Coast enforces it. You see every transaction the moment it happens. No more end-of-month surprises. If someone tries to fill up at an odd time or buy something outside of their limit, you'll know instantly. Fraud protection actually works on Coast. No shared VPNs, no missing receipts, no guessing. Employees check in by text. Coast verifies the purchase, and you stay in control. And your accounting team will thank you. Automatic receipt capture and cleaner data means month end goes from a tedious multi-hour project to now just a quick review. Unlike old fuel cards, Coast works everywhere Visa is accepted. Every gas station, every brand, every time. Your drivers aren't detouring just to find the one station that takes your card. There's no contracts, no commitments, just a smarter, simpler way to keep your questions tight and your crews moving. Right now, CoastPay is offering our listeners up to $2,000 credit when you get started at coastpay.com/Bruce. Go to coastpay.com/Bruce to see how you could earn up to $2,000 credit. Terms apply. That's coastpay.com/Bruce. The Coast Visa commercial credit card is issued by Celtic Bank. All card accounts subject to credit approval. All right, John. So I'm excited to ask you about this. I know that we always talk about the way wrestling used to be. And there's two comments like that from two guys that once upon a time I felt like would never be talking like this. And I guess we all get a little older. Brock Lesnar was recently quoted as saying that the backstage environment in WWE is softer than it used to be. The exact quote is, "I was a shooter, an amateur guy. I had a lot of credentials to my name. Of course, I got tested along the way by the old timers and the guys. You have to pay your dues. Back then, you paid your dues and you had to get your respect. It's different now, obviously. Things have gotten a lot softer. There isn't no more kangaroo courts. It's different now. But I mean, I go there. I'm the old guy now. No more kangaroo courts. Boy, you resemble that remark, don't you, John?"
Wrestlers Court. Brock was in a few of them as a witness and just fun times. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with the Wrestlers Court, and nowadays you got to be so careful with stuff, and you got to walk a fine line. Nobody can, it's just a different world. The world's changed, not wrestling. The world's changed. It's not like the world is a reflection of wrestling. Wrestling's not that big. Wrestling is a reflection of the world. It's the other way around, and the world's changed. And has the world gotten softer? 100%. Of course it has. There's no doubt about that. Are there still really tough guys out there? Of course there are. And there's still great talent in wrestling, but the world has gotten different.
Well, we're going to be taking a look at some kangaroo court. We've got another clip from Curtain Jerkers that we're going to be showing you. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about Chris Jericho. A lot of people are wondering, hey, when will we see Chris Jericho again? A lot of people thought he would be in the Royal Rumble. Some people are predicting he's going to be around WrestleMania weekend or maybe the Monday after WrestleMania. But everybody is hanging on every word from Chris Jericho. And he had a lot of words recently. He said, "What worries me about the guys working today is here I am at 55, 35 years in, with still some career left to go. I don't know if it's a year, 2 years, 4 years. I'm not sure. But I don't know how many of the guys working now will have the option to go 35 years. Hopefully all of them, but you can already see what serious injuries do. A bad neck surgery changes everything. The longevity may be harder to sustain when there's so much emphasis on the physical at the expense of charisma and character. I remember the first time I ever got hurt, I thought I was invincible. I was in Leon, Mexico, did a dive over the top rope, and the guy who was supposed to catch me, a guy called Masaka, just stepped aside. I landed on old school bolted down arena chairs. I messed up my arm and I thought, oh, I could actually get hurt doing this. And if a guy doesn't want to catch you, that's even worse. After that, I started getting smart about which moves were worth the risk. The guys who figure that out early are the ones who get the longevity. Now, I'm not pretending that you were a big plancha guy in your day, John, but I do want your take on what Jericho's saying here.
Yeah, it's part of the business. I think as Bob Orton once told me, he said, you learn your first few years in the business, not only what you can do, but what you can't do. And that's very important. And when you're working every single night, you learn that very quickly because you learn doing something and all of a sudden you can't wrestle the next night or you're hobbling the next night. You learn things that you shouldn't do. When your body's young, it can take a lot more than what your body should be able to. And that's important. You take some big fall, you go, I'm okay. Well, those things pile up on you. And if you're doing that every night, it's easy to figure that out. And if you're doing it just once a week, it's harder. So it's harder on these guys, and they have guaranteed contracts. So, getting hurt to them is not near as devastating as it was to us because we didn't get paid and couldn't make a living. And because of the fact that we work so much more, we could figure out what we could do and couldn't do a lot easier. And now the bar is getting so high out there. I agree with Chris. I mean, these guys are doing a lot of stuff. Is it too much? I don't know. They're fantastic athletes, but I think you're not going to see as long a careers because you're going to see a lot more injuries because guys don't have the ability wrestling every night to learn what they shouldn't do.
Well, I can't wait to see Chris Jericho sometime soon. But what I'm excited about right now is what we've got coming up. It's Curtain Jerkers, and everybody seemed to have a lot of fun with this last week. We saw some cameo appearances for a friend of the show, Hornswoggle and Heath Slater. Today we've got a special treat, and it's interesting as as folks are listening to this today, John. Yesterday was the 25-year anniversary of the very last Monday Nitro. And when people think about WCW, I think most of us listening to this, we just grew up with WCW. We're forever going to love WCW. And for most of us, Tony Schiavone was the voice of WCW. And I was surprised to hear that you have never worked with Tony Schiavone or even really spent any time with Tony Schiavone. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at Curtain Jerkers with special guest Tony Schiavone.
What does curtain jerker mean?
Isn't that something you do behind at the golf club?
Another edition of Curtain Jerkers. We are with one of the greatest commentators in the history of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling. Tony, it's great to have you.
Hey, Johnny, it's great to be with you, man. It really is. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you.
I sent you a text about a year or two ago. I was watching some random show, and you were calling some match. It was just a nondescript match, and no offense to the match. I remember who was in it, but you were calling that thing like it was the greatest wrestling match ever. And I thought, this is freaking awesome. No wonder people love you so much.
Well, I tried to, I was always a wrestling fan, right? Grew up as a wrestling fan, was very excited about getting in the business. And I'm very excited about matches, even matches that maybe fans don't like. I try to get very excited because sometimes I hope to elevate the excitement of the match. But I appreciate you saying that. I really do. It's been quite a journey for me in this business.
How long have y'all known each other?
Not very long personally. We don't know each other personally. We've probably met over the years, but never worked in the same territories.
No, that's right.
That's crazy.
Isn't that something?
That is crazy.
Never in the same territory. Absolutely. So there you go.
So, but here you are today.
Here we are today.
Here are today on Curtain Jerkers brought you together.
I know Curtain Jerkers brought me together, and
when you think of the term curtain jerker, what do you think?
I think of guys who opened up the show, the first guys who opened up the show. The guys didn't really mean that much. You have a 7-match card, and the curtain jerkers are the opening. I always heard Arn Anderson talk about curtain jerkers.
Really?
Yeah.
In a negative context.
In a negative context, but
the way Arn would say it with that southern accent is kind of a nostalgic, romantic type of idea. Like the curtain jerkers. We had the curtain jerkers coming up. Like I don't know who they are, but I want to meet them.
Right. That's right.
Is it a lot of pressure to be a curtain jerker?
Yeah, you've got to set the tone.
Yeah.
I remember there's a couple of times. There was one time we were at the Fayette County, Cumberland County Civic Center, Fayetteville, North Carolina, and it was Sam Houston and Black Bart were the curtain jerkers, okay? And they both bled and they were they were going way over the top, and Arn was so mad. And I remember he said, those motherfucking curtain jerkers shouldn't do the stuff that main eventers do because you build up to it back then, right? And I guess you kind of still do. So that's that term kind of stuck with me thinking about Black Bart and Sam Houston, all full of juice in the opening match of the card.
I feel like in the comedy world,
as Black Bart would say, who you calling the curtain jerker, you son of a bitch?
That's right.
I'll find some green grass and teach you a lesson.
Right.
Find some green grass.
He told me that so many times. I'm going to find me some green grass and I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to take you outside and whoop your ass?
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
just making sure.
Yes.
Just making sure.
Right.
Bart was the best.
He was something else, man.
Yeah.
He was something else. He used to get in there early and he'd get dressed and he'd sit in the corner of the locker room. Yeah, with a big trash can.
Big trash can.
Big trash can.
Big trash can?
Big trash can, just spit in it with all his tobacco. That was his spittoon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how Bart used to do.
Couldn't talk without his glasses falling down his nose, and he always pushed them up like this with the finger like that, like Longhorn.
Yeah.
Was he like Stan, where he couldn't see when he was out there wrestling?
Maybe so. I stand
because there's all the stories about Stan Hansen, of course, not being able to see at all.
Being able to see at all, but yeah, I'm not so sure about Bart, but he was quite the character. He really was. We had Bart. Black Bart, and we had Randy Colley, who was they were the Desperados, and of course we had Dutch Mantell, and they were the Desperados, and they were going to be like the Three Stooges of the Wild West, and wanted to bring waiting for Stan Henson to come to WCW.
That's right.
And Stan, he said, I don't want to have anything to do with those guys. I think I don't like silly wrestling. Well, we get that you don't like silly wrestling, but they are going to be thinking you're their buddies and you're going to beat the shit out of all three of them. He still didn't like that, so he didn't win. So we had to get rid of the Desperados. That was one of Dusty's big ideas, and we had some pretty good videos we shot on that. So,
wow,
there it is. Never worked out. Never worked out.
Now, of course, behind the desk, voice of our childhood, the whole deal.
Yeah.
John, when he's done it so many times now, filling in, sitting in on the commentary table. So I want to talk to both of you on that aspect. John, first of all, what do you remember? What's your first, hey, I'm going to do commentary?
Well, I want to make it clear. I'm a ham and egger and a part timer. Tony's a legitimate legend that in the business. Is a big difference between that two, that dynamic. But I remember the first time I did commentary, I was with King and JR during the Attitude Era when they were really hot and the product was hot. And I went down there and I saw JR had these copious notes. I mean, it's pages and pages of notes. And Jerry Lawler was drawing a woman in the front row. She had big boobs, even if Jerry said and I thought that's how you do commentary.
That's right.
You got to have the great play-by-play guy who sets the table.
Right.
Then you got to have some
drawing
guy
boobs guy
that's animated and draws boobs and just answers.
Tony, on the other side, when you see one of the boys is going to come sit in on the table with you guys, you've done it so many times now, but when you first started seeing that, what's your thought process? Do you go, hey, I got to help this guy? Do you ask him pre-hand? What do you do?
No, I let them do their thing. I think when a wrestler comes and sits down at our table, I think it's my job to set him up, to make him look good, and to let him talk as much as he wants. I always thought that you don't have to call every spot. It's television. They're seeing every spot. You got to make some of the things exciting, but you don't have to call everything. And they want to hear you talk. They want to hear the athletes talk. So I let them talk as much as they want. It doesn't bother me at all. And I think it's very important.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. People don't understand how important a play-by-play guy is. And I've done a lot of stuff, out there with different play-by-play guys over the years. And they are the ones that run everything, absolutely everything. They've got to throw the break. They've got to, anything that's wrong, they got to fix it. And because wrestling TV is live, and it's not football. Somebody gets hurt in football, you go from football to football.
Yeah.
You can go to break, you can go to whatever you want. You go from a women's match to a men's match to a mixed tag match to you name it. You're going from it's a variety show going one thing to another. And the play-by-play guy has to be able to lead that and lead all these different guys that are here at this table and somehow make sense of it. That's why there aren't very many good ones. Look at how many good play-by-play guys over the last 40 years, half a dozen at the most.
Right.
Most.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I that's a good way of putting it. I always considered myself. I always thought it wasn't about me. It was about the athletes in the ring. And I think maybe that's part of the longevity of what I've done, because you don't make it about the announcer. You don't. You make it about the guys in the ring, the girls in the ring. Once again, if one of the wrestlers sits down beside of us and talks, who has the experience in the ring, that is valuable. So I think maybe the longevity is, and why many people have loved my career, I don't make it about me. And because if you do your job the correct way, you'll get the notoriety without even trying to put yourself.
It's kind of like music on a good movie. You want it to be there, but you don't ever want to notice it, because that means it's taken away from the movie.
It's nothing like that.
And I think the older you get as a wrestling fan, thanks, appreciate it. I'll be over here. I think the beautiful thing is, the older you get as a wrestling fan, you think back on your favorite announcers and go, they did paint that picture for me.
There's been some incredible storylines I've been a part of, and some have worked and some haven't, but it's my job to make you enjoy them. So
let's get down to brass tacks.
And it's also a matter of where your ego is. Is your ego in yourself or is your ego in the product? And that's a big difference. And that's where a lot of people make a mistake. With Tony, the ego's in the product. And because of that shows. That means you're going to get the match over, you're going to get the guys over the next to you. That's something that's it's all a mindset of where your priorities lie, and that's in your ego.
Let's get to the brass tacks. When you're out there doing a show,
Okay.
multiple hours,
Yes.
what happens if you got to use the bathroom?
You don't. I have the strongest bladder in the world. I do. I have had shows to where I drink energy drinks. Drink one in the morning. This is TV day. Drink one in the morning. Drink one in the middle of the day. I'll have one at the show. So I have 3 energy drinks in me by the time the show is about midway through, and I'll have drunk water. No pissing at all. None. By the time I go to the hotel, it's like, get me to the fucking toilet right now. But it's a strong bladder. I've never had to do that. And I know that other announcers, have had that problem before.
Sure.
There's another thing, too, about announcers. Let me tell this story if I can. This is back in the WCW days. As announcers, we were very reluctant to go into the announcer's bathroom because one time, I can't remember where it was, one time we were all out. I think maybe we were in catering or some of us were out doing the sound check or whatever. And we came back and Paul White had just left our locker room, okay? All right? And we look into the bathroom and he had shit in our toilet, okay? And have you ever seen giant shit?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I'm not.
All right. Okay, it was like a big...
I've seen a giant
It was
shit,
like-
not giant.
It's like 3D Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
3D Jurassic.
It was like a big old Texas rattlesnake that's that big around, that's curled up in the fucking toilet, okay, with a head sticking up out of it. And I look, and we knew exactly who it was, okay? And Paul owned up to it. Said, yeah, I took a shit. I sure did. Right in there. So we were kind of scared to go back in there. No one had to piss, right? I'm not going in there and taking a piss because Paul, I'm telling you, Paul, for God's sake, you can take a shit in our room, but flush the fucking
I was about
toilet.
to say,
yes.
why didn't he?
He wanted you to see his shit. Okay? So I've seen giant shit. So there you go.
Have you seen giant shit?
I have, yes. Yes, I have. Yeah, in Stop Up, South Carolina. I'm telling you, you've never seen anything like it. Yeah, yeah.
But, I've had like so many great interactions with wrestlers through the years. They've, the older you get, the less fun you have, I guess. I don't know. You're just not. But, as I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and she said, think about the people that you have traveled with during your career, and I do. I mean, when I started out, I was traveling with Flair, Tully, and Arn, and JJ, right?
It's a good start.
It's a crazy start. When you
If you want cirrhosis. You want to end up in rehab. It's a great fucking start.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I came back to the house many times. They dropped me off and I was drunk. One time, Tully brought me back to the house. We were working Charlotte. It was like 3 a.m. and she locked me out of the house because she knew who I was with because they did crazy stuff. And then, I started working for the WWE, and then I started traveling with Lord Alfred Hayes a little bit, and then WCW era, and then I was traveling with Heenan and Mike Tenay, and I traveled with Jimmy Hart some, and now my travel is different, but those years of traveling with Ric Flair are some of the craziest years of my life. They really are. I'm going to take you back to 1990. It was Starrcade. 1990, St. Louis, and it was the Old Keel Arena, and we had no idea that entire year. We had this idea of the Black Scorpion going to be Sting's nemesis, and who's it going to be? And Ole Anderson had thought up of this Black Scorpion deal, but no one could come up with the idea who the Black Scorpion would be. It was Al Perez under a mask for many of the TV shows, but Al didn't want to do it, we understand. So Ric Flair finally said, fuck it, I'll do it. So he came out, he was with the Black Scorpion that night, and when the curtain came back, everybody knew that it was Ric Flair because you couldn't hide that fucking nose through the hood. All the fans were going, woo! We fooled them tonight. Okay. And then, of course, he did all the Ric Flair spots, so you know who it was. So that night, later that night, I'm asleep, and this is before cell phones, right?
Okay.
So the phone rings in my room, and I'm thinking, I'm home, my wife's home. We got 5 young kids, and something bad's going to happen. If she calls, I pick it up. Hello, and it's a drunk Ric Flair. And he said, "Come up here. I want to see you." I went, "No, fuck you." Boom, hung the road. Okay. He calls again. "Come up here." I pick it up again because it could be my wife. I should have known better. He said, "Come up here, or I'm going to come down there. I'm going to embarrass you. I'll find out what room you're in." So I get dressed. I go up, and the door's ajar, and Rick has the mask on. Okay, he has this big robe on that Olivia had built for him. Okay, it was monstrous. It weighed him down, and he says, "Hey, I want to show you something." I said, "Okay," and he stands in front of the mirrors at the Marriott there, and the back it used to be the sliding doors for the closet were all mirrors, and he's standing there in a little hallway, and he goes, "Sting," in the Black Scorpion's voice, "How can you contend with this?" And he opens up, okay, and there's the baby's arm just fully erect, okay. And I said, "Rick, you called me to come up to show me this." Something that everybody has seen. Everybody in wrestling has seen your penis. Everybody has. Okay. Okay. Right. He said, No. Hang on. Wait. I'll do it one more time. Thank God Almighty. Okay. So I mean, it's Sting. How can you contend with this? And the robe is so heavy it pulls him over when he falls on the fucking floor. So I said, "Rick, I got to go to bed. I'm getting the fuck out of here." He said, No, don't go. Don't go. I said, "Okay." So some of his buddies from Charlotte came in. We were all hanging around, and Rick was acting crazy. He goes out of the room naked. Pew. Okay, out of the fucking room naked. And they're panicking, like, "We got to find him." I'm going, "Yeah, you probably do." Yeah. Okay. So they go running out. They're all gone. There's like 3 guys. And I'm sitting in the room, and I'm not going to look for him. Fuck him. Okay. I was in a dead sleep. So he's running around the Marriott, the airport Marriott, St. Louis, butt naked. Okay. He'd taken the mask off. He has scars on his face, and he's running around, and they're looking for him. And they all 3 come back. "We can't find him. We can't find him." I said, "I don't give a shit. I'm going to bed." Okay, boom. So here's the story that I was told later by one of his friends. Can't remember his friend's name. They all said, "Fuck him too." Okay, so everybody leaves his room. The door locks. He's stuck in the hallways of a Marriott, naked, no place to put the key. Right? He doesn't have a key to his room. Right? Unless he stuck it up his ass, he probably should have. Okay. So he's locked out. So what do you do when you're locked out? You call security. Sure. Okay. He goes down in the elevator, butt naked down in the elevator, and sticks his head around the elevator door and goes, "Psst, psst." And he goes, "What?" "Psst. I was locked out of my room." She said, "I'll get security." Security came. It was a female, and they rode up in the elevator together and unlocked his room. Naked.
He's naked.
Butt naked. Good for him. Good. That was just some of the crazy things that Ric Flair did. And I've seen him stand on the bar, drop his pants down.
Sing "I'm a Little Teapot." Yeah, I sang that. Sing "I'm a Little Teapot," drop his pants and strut up down the bar, and somebody goes, "Oh, that's so cute." I go, "No, it's like at best a misdemeanor."
He couldn't get away with the stuff today. He could not get away with his stuff today.
No,
I saw
he
him
would sing "I'm a Little Teapot" for some reason and drop his pants and do the first strut up and down the bar.
Yeah. I saw him drop his pants on top of the bar, and when Nikita Koloff walked in, he crossbodied Nikita right off the bar. Yes, he did. Just out of his mind. Just absolutely out of his mind. Nikita walks in and goes, "Woo!" Boom. There he goes. There's our world champion. God bless America.
There's our world champion.
Just the crazy shit he's done is amazing.
All right, folks, listen up. I know a lot of families are feeling the pinch right now. I actually saw a report earlier this week that says all of a sudden Americans are making withdrawals from their 401k more than ever before. If that's you and you're feeling the pinch and you're looking for some cash, the solution that I'm going to recommend is hiding in your house. Now, it's not in your attic. It's not in your junk drawer in your kitchen. It's not in the basement. It's in the equity in your house. You see, whenever you pull money out of your 401k, not only do you have the opportunity cost, meaning your money's out of the market, so it's going to stop growing for you, it's also a taxable event. You're going to pay tax on that right up front. You're going to get a bill at the end of the year unless you just send them their portion right now. Instead, you can borrow against your house totally tax-free. And by the way, you don't pay tax on borrowed money. I don't know if you knew that or not. Not only that, but the interest you pay on your house, it is tax deductible. That is the smarter play. Ask any financial advisor and they'll tell you. But there's a lot of families who are sort of penny wise and dollar foolish right now who say, I don't want to let go of my great rate. Guys, you're overpaying if you're maxed out on your credit cards. What are those rates right now? I think the average credit card interest rate in America right now is like 22%. You know that's sky high. You know you can do better. You need a real plan to get out of debt. Now, nobody ever plans to be maxed out on their credit card, but you will need a plan to get out of debt. And we can help you do that at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. But what's the worst thing that could happen? The answer is nothing. You keep doing what you've been doing and overpaying the bank. Isn't it time you keep more of your own money? But what about a spring break from house payments? You won't have to make your April or your May payment. You're done until June 1st. And come June 1st, you'll have a cheaper monthly payment. Earlier today, we helped a single dad who works in IT in Tennessee. We paid off his truck payment and 6 credit cards. He'll skip his next 2 house payments, and he's saving $788 a month. Now, he could stick that money in his pocket, or what if he applied that to his house? How much faster would he pay his house off? He's going to be able to pay his house off in about half the time, and he's doing it with cheaper monthly payments. You can do this too. Find out how much money you can save for free at savewithconrad.com. And I want you to know Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac removed their minimum credit score. That's right. We've been able to help families just like yours with credit scores in the 530s. This is not a subprime loan. Those don't even really exist. This is through Fannie Mae. They're looking out for you, and we want to be your mortgage advisor for life. We're not a bank. We're not a credit union. We're not going to say no. We're going to say not yet, but here's how. Let's get a plan together to save money at savewithconrad.com. If you'd like to reach out to me personally, shoot me an email, conrad@savewithconrad.com, or just kick it old school and give me a call, 888-425-0105, savewithconrad.com, NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com.
Absolutely. Just what.
But you got a lot of those little guys. Yeah, and riding with Heenan, I always thought when people ask who's the greatest color commentator of all time, they don't mean who's the greatest. They mean who's second.
Yeah.
Because ain't nobody close
right.
to Heenan.
Right.
That man was different level.
Heenan always tried to make us laugh. I mean, when we were out, we were in Pensacola, and it was back in the days before you really had to check out and get a folio, right? You didn't get it on your phone, right? This was the 90s, and so we all had to line up and check out, and this was 4 o'clock in the morning, Pensacola at the hotel. I never will get this. Old guy's buffing the floor, and Heenan is looking at him, and he looks at me and looks at Tanae, and he says, watch this. So the guy had to plug right straight under the desk, and the plug ran out, the orange. So it was a lot of coil, and Heenan wrapped his foot around that coil, okay, and kept wrapping it around. And we all knew it was going to, there was a line of like 10 of us, and he wrapped it around. And by the time he goes up, Heenan trips, okay? And he just did it perfectly because the buffer went out of the old guy's hands, whoosh, shot right across the lobby, okay? Heenan falls forward, pulls himself up. There's a lot of things on the counter, like a lot of flyers and everything. He knocks all of them down. Okay, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, Pensacola. Knocks all of them down and goes, I'm sorry, it was a late night. I apologize. I just didn't get much sleep. And he used to do those pratfalls for us all the time. In convenience stores, he used to fall on the counter and clear off the whole fucking counter. The counter, everything, okay? Because a lot of convenience stores have a lot of stuff on the counter. Right? He would have, one time, he cleaned the counter out, and we're all standing behind him, and he's trying to help the lady pick up the stuff, and he reaches over to pick up something and grabs her right in the boob. He goes, boop. Oh, I'm sorry, I was just trying to help you out. So that time it was Lee Marshall with us. I told Lee, I said, let's get the fuck out of here. I don't want to be here when the cops come and this crazy guy in there. But he used to make us laugh. He was, you're right, on the air, There was nobody like him.
Nobody
right?
close.
Yeah, nobody close.
I always regretted he lost his voice.
Yeah.
Incredible. Anything but his
Yeah.
voice, because
That
he
was
was
terrible.
so gifted.
That was terrible. So
We've asked a lot of people. We did some interviews with a bunch of fans, and one of the questions we asked: who do you wish was around today to still have in this podcast era? Because
Right.
that's what we're doing is we want to hear these stories, and he's probably one of the number one answers.
Yeah.
Is man, if Bobby Heenan was in the podcast era, would have
Right.
been incredible.
yeah, he was a funny guy and a great teammate, and he would be great on a podcast.
He would be awesome.
Yeah. Wrestling is wonderful, but the best times are the travel times.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, getting
100%.
talking to the guys, going
Yeah.
from town to town.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best part of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely
by
the best
far.
part of it. So,
Are these? We're here at WrestleCade, Winston-Salem. Great event.
yeah.
Is this almost the closest thing you can get to that camaraderie back then? Because you're seeing all your boys here, you're seeing all your friends and coworkers you haven't seen in a while. Is this the closest?
Yeah, I got so bored during COVID, like everybody did. You didn't get to see anybody. I just wanted to get out and see some people. I just want to see Ron Simmons and see Godfather, the guys, the boy. Everybody. See
Right.
Tony, guys like Tony, everybody. It just,
Right.
I missed them. I really missed them. I don't. Obviously, I'm 59 years old today, and so thank you. So I don't miss the wrestling that much.
Yeah.
Of course you do. As the older you get, the more you forget you're hurt and everything. But you miss the boys.
Right. Yeah.
You miss the car rides. You miss the sitting around bullshitting. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So we just had to amuse each other.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons stories were so much better in our day.
Right.
Because we didn't have all this different stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a great point. It's I miss the times riding, and I do ride with some guys. I ride with Don Callis some. I ride with QT Marshall some. I ride with Sanjay some. I ride with guys who've been in the ring and have done some things, and just hear the stories that they tell. And it's just, the stories are just wonderful. The stories that I love, John. I love to bust people's ass backstage. I really, really do. I love to really
Backstage?
backstage.
I mean, everywhere.
Well, everywhere.
Yeah, just in life.
One of the things I do all the time is, because I get out, I get around, I spend a lot of time in Tony's office backstage, which I should, and the announcers have their own room. I'll go into, they all have signs for everywhere. And I'll do this almost every week. When I know there's a lot of guys in the back and there's a sign that says male talent, right? I'll walk in the room, they'll look at me and say, I'm sorry. I thought it said male talent outside, so I'm obviously in the wrong fucking room. And they always pop, so they're now looking for it right now. They're absolutely looking for it. And then I remember saying that. Then they all look at me and laugh, and I say, "Yeah, I didn't mean you, Miro. You're talent, buddy."
That's right. That's right. There's always a caveat to everything. Like Ken Shamrock was that way. Haku was that way. Listen, I'm ribbing all you guys except for you, Ken.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Haku, we're not talking about you.
No, absolutely.
We even said when they did the invasion of Norfolk, when WWE invaded WCW, we were sitting out there. We actually waited because we didn't know what WCW might do back. And we're sitting there going, if they send over Haku, we're sending out Shamrock. We're going to watch the fight of the century.
What an epic fight.
Oh, my God. They'd still be fighting.
Well, I'm sure they would. I didn't know Shamrock, but I knew Haku. He told me that he claims that he saw in a bar one night a guy was running off his mouth at Haku. And I guess the king that I called him, had too many to drink, and just reached in the guy, broke off his bottom teeth as the guy's talking.
You know what?
Yeah. The guy was running his mouth at the bar, and Haku had enough and just reached in his mouth as the guy's talking and just broke off his bottom teeth. He swears it's true.
I've heard stories of very much the same.
Yeah.
I've never seen Haku fight. I've been around him a lot.
Yeah.
Never seen it, but it's
Yeah.
like a sniper from what they said.
Yes.
He just took people out one after another systematically.
Nick Patrick.
Yes. Took
said
him out?
No, thankfully
Okay.
no. But he said he was at a bar, and these guys, as you guys know, we've talked about, when they see one of the boys, they want to start popping off. And is it fake or
Yeah. Right.
And so it started going down, and he was there, and in like 2 seconds had the guy up in the air with one hand up against the bar, up against the column.
Yeah.
And was choked. The guy was like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, bud,
Yeah.
we need to leave now. Thank you for shutting this down. But
right.
we need to leave the area because you went immediately to that. So, yeah, it was like, That's crazy.
We worked Disney one time years ago, back in the 90s, and we were at the parking lot, and I got out of my rental car. He got out of his, and he and I were walking. He said, I have a question for you. I said, okay. He says, you have sons? I said, yes, I have 4 sons. He said, I do too. He said, how do you control these kids? They do not listen to me. What do I do? I said, first of all, you let them know who the fuck you are.
yeah. You tell them who dad is.
I said, if they're not going to listen to me, it's fine. But if they don't listen to Haku, something wrong with those kids.
Let me show you a tape real quick.
That's right.
I was working with Haku one time at a battle royal, and I said, I got to feel this chop one time because it's so supposedly so big and stiff.
Yeah.
So I said, hit me with that big chop, brother. He hit me so hard in the chest, I thought he broke my ankles. I'm like, this motherfucker has broke my ankles by hitting me in the chest. And I told him, I said, if I ever call that again, please ignore me. Do not do what I say. You hurt me.
But as they say, and it's true about him, sweetest guy in the world.
Yes.
Really.
He is the
Good
nicest
friend.
human
Did
being.
he go in the Waterloo the same year you did? Or is that Conrad?
He went same year with
same
Conrad?
year with
Yeah,
Conrad.
okay, yeah. He
Yeah,
deserved it.
it's super nice.
Yeah.
Boy, he's got those mitts too.
Doesn't he? Yes, sir, buddy.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, he came to a show that we had in Charlotte a couple of years back, and his son was there wrestling. And we were back in catering, and he was sitting at the table with Arn Anderson. As soon as I walked down, Arn Anderson, because I love to give Arn grief. Love it. It's one of the greatest things in the world. And Arn Anderson just looked at me. He said, say something to me now, motherfucker. He just pointed at Haku. So it's well known, man. Well known.
Is there any lore about Tony Schiavone that you've heard?
Well, I've heard some rumors that Johnny Valentine, a dinner with Johnny Valentine, legendary figure and legendary ribber.
Yes, yes.
I used to wrestle Greg back in Texas when
Right.
Crockett tried to run it, and Johnny would show up and Greg would turn into Tank Abbott. Like, oh my, I don't care if your dad's here. Please, I'm not trying to impress him. Would you quit beating the shit out of me? Oh my God.
Just beating the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, Johnny was one of the toughest men ever, and he was like Wahoo. You know, they were just as tough as they come, and didn't take much shit from anybody. Which back in those days, you know, it was a little bit different. And he treated people. So David Crockett has told me this story many times, and I've had it validated by people like Flair. Johnny would do 2 things that were very, very well known back in the Mid-Atlantic territory. They would have catering, right? And no one wanted to get in line after Johnny Valentine in catering.
Oh, no.
Because Johnny would, at many times, had taken a shit and had it in a napkin or something, and would dump it in the steak and gravy, okay, and then stir it up real good, okay.
Stir it up. And many times had taken a shit, not just a story.
And he did that. He would take shit and throw it in the macaroni and cheese, and you know that was his rib, and yeah, that was his rib.
That's not a rib.
Yeah,
It's a crime.
Okay, and then.
Yeah,
that's not a
That's
rib.
at least a misdemeanor.
Putting shit in a Salisbury steak is a foul.
And the thing is, back then, guys would go, "Oh yeah, they're just ribbing."
Yeah,
He's shit in your food.
If a normal human went, hey, I took a shit and I dumped it in my dinner and made my wife eat it, you'd be like, what are you talking about, dude?
Yes.
But when wrestlers do it, they go,
that's hilarious.
"Oh, that's awesome! No, it's great."
Do it again in the next
She didn't know.
She didn't know.
Yeah.
So did you ever eat the shit?
No, that was before my time.
Oh.
But thank God.
That was wrestling before your time.
Then here's another. I've been thinking about this one, but he used to take in the locker room, he used to take a coat hanger and fashion a coat hanger with a little hook. You know, you turn a little hook on the end, right?
Yeah.
And he used to sit over here and grab the end of Flair's penis with it.
Excuse me?
Yeah. And
What's that?
And whack him off with the.
He what? Wait, what? He what?
Curtain jerk?
Curtain jerk. I don't know if he really got him off or anything, but he used to grab his penis and pull it back and forth.
If he really
with the coat hanger.
what, like just move it? Or
How did he get it on? How did he get it on Flair's penis?
I guess he knew. I guess he knew the
But
size
like Flair
of the
had to
noose.
like be somewhat complicit with this.
Of course he was.
I mean, it's like he's just like sitting there going,
Yeah.
"Hey, well, if you got a coat hanger, would you put one
Yeah,
on?"
but I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did. I've heard that story too.
We've all had the move where you just start doing that move and see what happens. But
Yeah.
I don't expect a coat hanger to come out.
Coat hanger.
Like it's the night at the Apollo.
Yeah. I got to ask David for some more of those stories because those are legendary Johnny Valentine stories from back then. Of course, Flair just started, right? He just started in the business, and I'm sure Flair was every bit as crazy back then as he is now.
And apparently is naked back then.
Yes, yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, exactly. I said when I got into the Hall of Fame in Waterloo, I mentioned during the acceptance speech, Johnny, I said, "Hey, I've seen Ric Flair's penis," and almost to a
In the
man.
acceptance?
Yes, almost to a man. Everybody in there said, "Everybody has." Every wrestler in there said that. So it all started with Johnny Valentine in the coat hanger.
Have you seen it, JBL?
I haven't. I've heard about this, but I don't know why people would think that would work. I don't know why you're in your hotel room and think, hey, I'm going to grab one of those coat hangers. I'm going to go to the locker room, find one of the boys, and I'm going to whack him off. That just doesn't seem like something that would logically go through your head. Like, I'm going to fashion a loop on here.
Okay.
I'm going to find a guy sitting next to me, and I'm going to put this around his yang.
Right, was he throwing out the vibe, and then he started fashioning
Okay,
the coat hanger?
I've told you what I know. Okay, don't act like my wife. Don't act like my wife. Let me look straight in this camera and say these are stories that I've heard about.
This one's not validated.
No, but how do you make up stuff like that? Right?
It's a good call.
Yeah, it's a good call. I'm just going to have to talk to David Crockett again. Say, David, you got any more Johnny Valentine stories? And he could probably give me some more.
Anybody in the locker room over your years put any household items on it?
Not that I know. No, I've never heard. Not that I know of.
Oh God, really a wonderful business with the stories. Yeah, I just love it.
What do you think, Casio?
Oh man, what is this life? This is silliness, John.
It is silliness. Schiavone, what a good guy Schiavone is. I've never been around Tony Schiavone. He doesn't care at all, does he?
No, he zero on the fucks given scale. And yeah, you mentioned it, man. I was as shocked as anybody realizing you guys had never crossed paths.
Never crossed paths. He's always been in WCW or somewhere else. I've always been in a different territory. Never crossed paths one time. He's one of the greatest commentators of all time. And obviously, and you're right, zero fucks given. Zero. He does not care.
But thank you for Tony for joining us. Somehow, I don't know. I mean, I know our name is Curtain Jerkers. We didn't plan on having jerking in every episode, though. No. But somehow it is lent there. We're 2 for 2 here.
The biggest shock I've gotten in the last decade or more was Hornswoggle telling that story. Because I was teeing up the rooster underneath the ring because we had the footage of it, which nobody else has, which is a really good story. Not even close. Not even close to the Zack Ryder story, which, by the way, you and I both.
Oh, yeah.
We're fans.
The people have spoken, my friend.
The people have spoken. Matt Cardona, we're your biggest fans.
It's not finished. Nothing. It is not finished. The story is not finished. Speaking of stories, John, I got a little something for you. I know. Now, look, we're working on it. The internet is clamoring for a flogging the mules t-shirt.
This does not end well. I know this doesn't end well. There's nothing serious about this. This is like trying to tell me, tee up something really heartwarming for me. This is not good.
We're working on trying to get a flogging the mule shirt. The people have spoken.
There's nothing like mule flogging.
No. But what else we might need to sell, especially after that, is a little bit of this, John. And I got something for you, especially since these shirts we're wearing. I'd like to now this is plastic, so I can't shape this. It's not going to be form-fitting for you, John. But if you'd like me to try, because this is apparently what you do in the business when you're boys with somebody. You can go easy way or hard way, since I can't. I don't know which one to start with, but let me just give you some of that, John.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like, stop it. That is disgusting. Who even thinks of that?
Maybe we can figure out how to sell these with a little cowboy hat right there. Just a little JBL coat hanger, just for when you need one. You know, you never know when you need one.
I got cowboy hats everywhere around here. Just what do you need?
Yeah. We'll put a little one right here, a little branding. Maybe some curtains. What if we had curtains right here that you could peek through for curtain jerkers? We're working on it. We've got this in research and development right
How
now.
does that even happen? I mean, where does that? I don't even know who would even think of something like that.
You tell me. You've never. I mean, surely somebody's done it to you.
No.
Apparently, on the business.
No. Do not guess that. No.
Yeah, that's odd. Is that a good fit? I don't know where the fit is. Oh, John.
What the fuck is this? That is disgusting.
I don't again.
Johnny Valentine first went out with Greg and Medusa when they were dating, and Medusa says she feels like some water underneath the table. She couldn't figure out what it was. Johnny was at a restaurant, was pissing on her feet. And it wasn't like pissing on her feet, it's like just pissing on the floor, and it just like that was normal. Valentine was crazy.
What's wrong with all your people? All your
people.
All your people, and that's not business. It's insane. They're absolutely insane.
Yeah, they're absolutely crazy. Yeah. I wrestled Greg in San Angelo, and he'll tell a story. I knocked his tooth out with a clothesline, and his dad was there. And so when his dad was there, when Johnny Valentine was there, Greg Valentine turned into Tank Abbott. I mean, he just beat the shit out of me. I'm like, Greg, I understand your dad's here. Please get off me. So out of defense, I guess I hit him with a clothesline, knocked his tooth out. And so we're driving back to Abilene or where we're going, and I look up and I see these bright lights just flying toward me. I mean, like flying. I thought it's a cop or something. We had beer in the car. I said, oh shit. And the guys are just laughing. And one of the guys goes, oh, that's Greg. And then right then, bam, hit us going about 90 miles an hour. Oh yeah, going down the highway. Bam, run down the road. We got beer, they got beer. And he just keeps hitting me. I'm like, and the guys in the car are just laughing like this thing. That's normal. No, it's actually not. It's actually not.
You're in death race. This is the strangest cannonball run ever right now. Well, look, I think curtain jerkers. I feel like the people are receiving it well. At least the first couple. Maybe we'll see after this one.
Are we canceled yet? I mean, there's
no. After this one, if we survive, I think we're good to go for a little bit, maybe until the next one. Until the next one. I think that buys us a week. I think because from what we have already done,
do you comedian guys do that stuff?
No, no, it's a much different green room. I'll tell you that. We don't dress nice enough to have coat hangers around. It's our best T-shirt. So the coat hangers are out. But I mean, for another time, you know, I got a story about soaping a guy's ass, but I'll tell you.
I bet you do.
You got to be clean after your show. Look, from the things we have ready to go and the things we have scheduled for curtain jerkers, this is going to be a fun ride for everybody. And like you said, I have no idea when it's going to stop. It could stop very abruptly.
We could be canceled. Like the whole internet could cancel us, I would say.
I hope y'all get to see what we've got.
It'll be a mercy killing. Like fuck those guys.
We did roll out with. I mean, we came out of the gate strong. I mean, we survived that.
Strong.
We might survive all the rest.
Like bodacious on Tough Heatman. We came out strong.
And if you are in the business and we have not contacted you yet, and you have stories to get out there, call us, please. Look, we'll even buy your merch for supporting you.
That's right. We will buy your merch and support you. Yes, we will.
Curtain Jerkers is not finished yet either. We got another one in the book.
We're Matt Cardona's fan club.
We are. All right, John, this has been a good one, man. Y'all let us know what you think. We're having a blast doing it. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but we're having a blast. Woo.
Are people watching us?
Judging by my Twitter timeline last week, yes, they are watching. We'll see after this one.
The term mule flogging. I don't think anybody thought that was going to be the term of the year. No. Flogging the mule.
No, no, nothing about anything we've done. We saw none of that coming. Literally, we saw none of that coming.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
You know that. Right. You know, Finley tried to sell Hornswoggle one time in Thailand.
Sell him.
Oh yeah. He had him sold, and Hornswoggle was like,
he had him sold.
Seriously. No, it's not. That's a true story. And Hornswoggle says, "Dude, you can't sell another human being."
No, that's highly illegal.
It is illegal.
Pretty much every country, I believe.
I think in all, like 200 something countries, it's illegal in all of them.
Yeah. What held it up? Did the Swoggle not pass inspection or what?
That's right. He didn't pass out. That's what. Of course, that held him up. Look at him. You know he ain't
cracking the crossface.
Yeah. So at one point, Hornswoggle goes, "Dude, you can't sell me." And Finley says, "I'll get you back."
He could have probably bought him back cheaper after one night of them.
Oh my God! They'd have sent him back. The postage would have been too much.
We'll give you your money and some if you'll take him back.
Yeah. You've made a huge profit. We're going to give him back. And we're going to pay you like a wheelbarrow full of money.
John, this is you teaching us how to make money.
That's right.
People Swoggle, and they'll send him back with more money.
That's right.
It's an instant profit for all of us.
Instant profit.
Let's see if we can get that guy that's auctioning off Conrad's belt to put Swoggle.
We can auction off Hornswoggle every single week. And then, like on Monday, people call us back and go, "Dude, you're taking him back."
Take him back.
We're going, no, not unless you pay us double.
Interest, yeah, we need interest.
Yeah, you got to pay us double.
Yeah. That's our new scheme. That flogging mule t-shirts and curtain jerkers, coat hangers. We are on to something here, son. And you thought you had a podcast with Conrad about money. You got one with me about money too, sir.
You damn right. Hell yes.
All right. That's been great. I hope y'all see us again.
If you don't, we're gonna miss you.
We are. All right. I mean, just scoot over. Just scoot over.
Oh my God.